Oh, for God's sake. Please. No, 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 no. Hello. Hello. People are coming in. Yeah, we did it. I mean, I did it. Good. So I guess for anyone just now joining the stream, let me make sure I think my voice should actually be coming through. Yeah, I think it is. I just, like a week ago, got a new computer for the first time in like years. So everything has changed. All my files have been like reset. OBS wasn't set up. YouTube wasn't set up. I had to like restart the whole process to do a live stream over again. So I think we got there finally. Yes, I had to reinstall the Gaster GIF and everything. I don't know who's going to be watching this tonight. This is, to be clear, an unlisted stream. This is just for people on my Discord who are coming in. And I'm going to be theoretically watching through and responding to the new JaruJaru video, which everyone seemed to be in an absolute unmitigated tizzy about while I was at work today. And I'm not going to watch it unless if it's on stream, so I figured this is her one shot. I want to see what the fuck is going on here. Alice, do you know what's in the video? I've heard basically what's in the video. I should be very upfront here and say that like this isn't necessarily like an unbiased good faith response here. Like I've been primed. I'm pretty sure I'm going to disagree with almost everything in the video. But I just have to see this for myself, basically. I really just have to see this. I'm not going to get drunk. I want to be at least like somewhat respectful here. I'm not going to be rude, but this sounds wacky. Maybe I should get into it. I'm not waiting for like 50 million people to pile in here. This is like an under the table Discord only stream. So, fuck. Yeah, why not? Let's just get started here.
My name is Jaru. Today I'm talking about Deltarune. There will be major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale, so please play them both before watching this. This video is me responding to so I highly recommend you check out my previous videos in order to get some important context.
Oh fuck!
Today's video will
okay, pausing it quick. I haven't actually watched Jaru's other videos, which is important to note. So I'm like a neophyte. I don't actually know what I'm talking about, but I am sort of aware of his kind of ongoing cinematic universe, like the Jaru canon, where like the game is it's an alternate timeline. And it's not an alternate universe, and Chris is Frisk or something. I don't really understand it, but I know a couple things anyway. This is going to be the first Jaru video I've properly watched, which is sort of not the best circumstances, so forgive me for that.
Of me discussing and analyzing one of the most puzzling characters in Deltarune.
This is long too.
I am, of course,
yes, an hour and 20.
To the lonely prince from the dark, Ralsei. I will go over all of the options regarding Ralsei's true name.
Damn it, it's one thing to go Ralsei, but it's another thing to put the stress on the last syllable. That's like Ralsei. It's not Ralsei, it's Ralsei.
Nature before I end the video by discussing my personal theory regarding what Ralsei truly is. You'll want to stick around for that part, as my theory is one that you've likely never heard before.
Apparently
Not only
so.
will I be giving what I think is a rather shocking answer to the mystery of Ralsei, I will also be giving you two more revelations that are so important that they could easily have been given their own videos. In total, this theory might have even more insane ramifications than even my theory on the angel, which was pretty insane in its own right.
Okay.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start by discussing all the options regarding what exactly Ralsei could be. The broad categories are that he is a lightener, a darkener...
Why is the first one lightener? I mean, maybe he's just going and like... That's the natural ordering, but I don't know. It's vaguely ominous that the first option is lightener.
Or something unique. However, we can further subdivide the lightener category into a...
Okay, maybe I got ahead of myself here. I have to do all the disclaimers first, right? So this is going to be me responding to Jaru. I have no ill will against Jaru. I'm probably going to be disagreeing with a lot of the shit, but just like, I don't disrespect him. This is a low stakes game with we're spitballing about what our favorite video game is what's gonna happen with it in several years. Okay, so no one think this is a personal attack against Jaru, or I'll be upset.
couple more specific options. Within the Lightner category, Rousey could be a human, a monster, or he may literally be Azrael.
But that's the monster, though.
That
That's
gives
not
us a total of 5 possible answers to the question of what is Rousey. However, before we...
Okay, wait a minute. So the 5 answers. Chris? No, wait, no. 5 answers. Human, monster. For some reason, Azrael is his own option. Darkner, something else. Alright, I don't understand why Azrael is his own option, but I guess this is generally true.
We can even begin considering these options, we first need to define exactly what Darkners and Lightners are, as well as what attributes they possess. Let's start with Lightners. Lightners are humans and monsters. They live in the real world, aka the light world, and they have the power of determination.
Yeah.
Naturally, this also means they have souls.
I made a video on that. I shouldn't have hesitated so much.
Souls haven't been brought up too much in Deltarune, but based off the way Spamton talks about it, it would appear that Darkners do not have souls, while Lightners do have souls.
That's kind of implied, yeah. We haven't heard anything about Darkners having souls yet. And we know that Lightners all have them because of that book in the library. It sort of seems like a common knowledge thing, so... yes, fair assumption that Darkners don't have souls.
This is backed up by the fact that the Queen was under the impression that only Lightners are capable of creating dark fountains, which makes sense since she believes that determination is needed to create such fountains, and determination is generated by soul.
In Undertale it was. This is something that I sort of tried to cast doubt on in like the first video I made on my channel, where it seems kind of unclear whether determination comes from souls anymore. Because one specific instance is when Chris makes the fountain in Chapter 1. The fountain at the end of Chapter 2. They're going over into the living room, and they stab the ground, right? But at that point in time, their soul is in the couch, so it sort of seems like either the determination has to have like some sort of latency period before it drains out of your body or something like that, or the soul was not what was generating the determination in the first place, because otherwise how could Chris have made the fountain with the soul in the couch cushions? But so this is a point that I'm iffy on here, whether or not the soul makes determination.
The next Lightner attribute is that when in combat in the Dark World, Lightners can be brought below 0 HP. This
is only Lightners? I wonder where he's going with this.
Does not kill them, but instead just seems to knock them unconscious, or something similar to that. This is supported by the fact that Susie's sleeping pose is the same as the pose she has when she's below 0 HP.
Okay, but what's the comparison with Darkners?
Furthermore, when Chris gets knocked below 0 HP in this fight with Birdly, he says that Chris is down, to which Noelle responds that she can still hear their voice despite this.
Okay, this is pretty clear. I don't know why I had to bring in the whole Snowgrave can of worms, but...
Similarly, if Chris is downed in this fight, Susie talks about Chris as if they weren't able to hear her or respond to her. This seems to imply that under normal circumstances, being below 0 HP prevents you from talking, which further supports the notion that being below 0 HP is the equivalent of being unconscious.
I mean, this is all very well and good, but this was supposed to be listing the attributes of, like, Lightners, specifically from any of the other kind of options he laid out here. It sort of seems like he's implying that this doesn't happen for Darkners, but maybe I'm just not sure where he's going yet.
For Lightners. Notably, Lightners have monochrome character portraits no matter which world they are in. And lastly, Lightners are different from Darkners in that Lightners can travel in the world of light. Lightners only change slightly upon switching between the light world and the dark world, and thus still retain most of their normal attributes no matter which world they are in. As for the lore regarding the Lightners, Sham says the Lightners created the Darkners and gave them purpose. This is likely referring to the fact that the Lightners are responsible for creating the inanimate objects that would later become the Darkners.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with all this.
Speaking of which, let's talk about those Darkners. Originally, darkeners were simply inanimate objects. Sham was a stuffed animal, Lancer was a playing card, Queen was a computer, and so on. However, if an inanimate object is placed within range of a dark fountain, it is brought to life and granted a brand new form. Take Lancer, for example. He was originally a simple playing card, but through the power of a dark fountain, he was granted life, intelligence, various supernatural powers,
A little bit of intelligence.
and a brand new humanoid form. All Darkners received similar blessings, although the specific powers and body shape that Darkners receive can vary quite widely. For example, Lancer, Queen, and Sham are all roughly human-shaped, but Clover, Mouse, and Task are all distinctly not human-shaped.
Sounds familiar if you know what a monster is, eh, Toby? What an original idea.
As I mentioned before, Darkners don't seem to have souls. This makes sense, as Darkners aren't really living creatures. They are inanimate objects that have been granted unique properties as a result of being exposed to a dark fountain. Why do dark fountains bring these objects to life? Well, we don't know for certain, but here is what we do know. Dark fountains are created using determination. In Undertale, we know that injecting something with determination will grant that thing the will to live. As such, it stands to reason that whatever substance the Dark Fountain is pumping out involves determination in some way.
I mean, like, I could see a little bit of logic there. This is well into like the a stance that I don't really follow, which is like trying to make the parallels between Undertale and Deltarune's like magic and kind of world mechanics a bit too direct here. But I could see this sort of makes a bit of sense when you put it like that, you know, like determination can bring inanimate things to life, or at least inanimate things that have like Azrael dust on them. I don't think Alfie has ever talked about what would happen if you injected determination into like a Twinkie or something. I don't think that would end well, but like maybe kinda. Oh, I'm sipping, it's ginger tea again. It's always fucking ginger tea.
As determination is the only source of power that we know of that is capable of bringing something to life.
Unless it's like a new one that was defined for this new kind of universe and game that's just specific to dark fountains and determination's different. Just putting that out there, but...
Darkners cannot be brought below 0 HP in most circumstances and will instead run away. However, upon using Snowgrave on a Darkner, they turn red and disintegrate.
This is only known because of, maybe, actually, I'm not sure about this. I had it in my head that this was only possible to do by modifying the game somehow. Like, they have this animation, but it's not actually possible to trigger. Because I don't think it's actually possible to cast Snowgrave outside of the Birdly fight, right? Like, if you take the Ring of Thorns, you won't get, like, that unique interaction that makes Noelle cast Snowgrave if you're just fighting a normal enemy, I think. A chat says it is possible. Okay, that's interesting. Alright, okay, so you beat Birdly with Ice Shock. So it's just really obscure, and okay, so that's fair if it's in the game. I was gonna say if you had to like data mine to get to this, I'm not comfortable considering it as evidence, but yeah, fair enough.
This is different from the monsters in Undertale, as monsters would turn into gray dust upon dying, as opposed to whatever red substance makes up the Darkners. Notably, Darkners have colored portraits, as opposed to the black and white portraits that Lightners possess. And lastly, upon leaving the range of a dark fountain and entering the light world, a Darkner will revert back into an inanimate object. When this happens, the Darkner loses all of their powers and abilities until such time as they return to a dark fountain. That said, according to Rousey, each Darkner is a reflection of the will of their fountain.
A world whose darkness reflect the will of its fountain. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Why does the fountain have a will?
Which means that if a Darkner travels from one dark world to another, they may not be compatible with that world and will thus turn into a statue.
Okay, we got updates in chat for the Snowgrave, whatever it's Fridge Stealer says that you can use you could sorry. This isn't an ideal time to stream. I'm tired. I can't speak, but whatever. You could do it in vanilla gameplay, but it was patched in an update. I'm gonna have to take chat's word for this. So it is technically. I'm gonna say it's fair to at least consider. Okay, someone else says it's not patched. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
As for the lore regarding the Darkners, they are said to have been created by the Lightners, and they derive their purpose from said Lightners. Rousey tells Lancer that the purpose of Darkners is to assist the Lightners, and that doing so is the only way their kind can feel fulfilled. Similarly, he tells Queen that their purpose is to make Lightners happy. So, that is the gist of what Lightners and Darkners are. Lightners are regular people, while Darkners are inanimate objects brought to life through the power of a dark fountain. With the preliminaries out of the way, let's start going through the options regarding what exactly Rousey could be.
It's only been 8 minutes, and all we've established is that what Darkners and Lightners are. Fuck yeah, this is going to be a long one.
Let's begin by considering the option Rousey claims to be. Is Rousey a Darkner? There is a fair bit of evidence in favor of this interpretation.
Is there? It's just weird to hear this being considered as like not like this is the default obvious option. How do we move away from this in any way possible? It's like, all right, let's. What are the pros and cons here of Rousey being a Darkner? Maybe it's theoretically the more unbiased way to approach it. Just.
He repeatedly implies that he is a Darkner, and while Rousey is a very suspicious entity, I don't think he's the kind of person who would outright lie. As for physical evidence, we have only ever seen...
I don't see why Rousey wouldn't lie if he needed to.
Rousey in the dark world, and while that's not concrete evidence that he's a Darkner, it at least leaves the door.
Wait, I missed that.
And while that's not concrete, we have only ever seen Rousey in the dark world.
Oh, okay.
And while that's not concrete evidence that he's a Darkner, it at least leaves the door open. If Rousey had appeared in the light...
It doesn't leave the door. That implies that like it wouldn't have been possible otherwise. No, I guess that is true. Never mind. What am I talking about?
World at any point, that would have damaged the theory that he's a Darkner, as Darkners revert back into mundane objects.
I'd say it would have fucking obliterated the theory, like, immediately. I think if Rousey just appeared in the light world and could walk around, then we'd all be proven wrong. Shit, he was a Lightner the whole time.
Upon entering the light world. Continuing with the physical evidence, the fact that Rousey completely disappears upon dropping below 0 HP definitely works as evidence of him being a Darkner, as both Susie and Chris simply fall down upon losing all their HP. The fact that Rousey behaves in a way that is different from both a human and a monster suggests that he is neither of those.
That's a pretty good piece of evidence.
And as a result, supports the idea that he is a Darkner. Then there's the fact that his description literally refers to him as a dark world being.
That's pretty on the nose, gotta say. That would just be Toby lying to us. That would just be Toby writing a piece of text in the UI that is false. Like, who do you even blame if that's wrong? Who in universe misinformed us about this? Gaster? It's so weird to think about that could be potentially a red herring, but even potentially.
It is somewhat suspicious that it doesn't just refer to him as a Darkner and instead uses this more vague wording. But still, this at least confirms that Rousey is not a light world being. More evidence of Rousey being a Darkner is the simple fact that he knows so much about the Dark World.
He sure does.
He knows the prophecy, he knows how dark fountains work, he knows how Darkners work, and he knows how separate dark worlds work. To be blunt, Rousey has proven to be more well-informed about the plot than nearly any other character. Pretty much the only Darkners who may have greater knowledge are Jevil and Spampton, but both of those characters are insane and speak in riddles, so Rousey still gets bonus points for being the most knowledgeable of the sane and comprehensible Darkners.
Right, Olivia in chat says that Darkner as terminology isn't familiar to the player yet. That's a kind of a good point, because I think that piece of text on the battle menu would only appear like before any other updates are made, right? Because I think later on Rousey is referred to as like the Dark Prince who doesn't have any friends or something. So that would be from pretty early in the game. So it's not a huge point, but I thought that was worth mentioning.
Some more evidence in favor of Rousey being a Darkner comes from his appearance. While it's strange that he looks so similar to Azrael, there are some key differences.
Yeah.
For one, Rousey has a colored portrait, which is normally only possessed by Darkners. But most notably, Rousey has these bright pink horns, glasses, and wears a green robe with a pink scarf. Toriel at one point mentions that Chris used to have a pair of red horns that they loved to wear, and she doesn't know what happened to them. Darkners are created when mundane objects are exposed to the power of a dark fountain. So it's
Okay, where is this? This is like not how I expected this to start, because I know how this ends. Like this is the calm before the storm here. So he's brought up like all the evidence that Rousey is a Darkner. He's now bringing up the horn headband theory, which is like one of the simplest and one of my favorite explanations for what Rousey is. So how does it accelerate from this into the destined ending? That's fascinating to me right now.
seems probable that those red horns were one of the objects used to create Rousey. Furthermore, it is specifically mentioned that the green crayon is missing from the Dreamer household, and Rousey predominantly wears green. So it seems feasible that this green crayon was yet another of the objects used to create Rousey.
Yeah, the green crayon's interesting, because I think that's a callback to, like, the drawer in Toriel's house in Undertale, where there's also no green crayons. And even then, it was kind of mysterious why that was the case. It was like, did someone who lived there really like to use the green crayons, and so they got used up quickly? Was there some other reason, some other reason why the greens were moved out? So, like, for one, like, this piece of dialogue is first and foremost like a callback to that, but even then, yeah, what does it mean? So, fair enough.
Maybe someone drew a picture of Azrael wearing this costume, and then that picture was brought to life by a dark fountain.
I mean, like, maybe? Or why not just the horn headband? Why would someone draw a picture of Azrael wearing this goofy-ass robe? It seems kind of specific. I think, like, the horn headband is, like, still resolutely simpler than this.
We do see several drawings of various characters throughout the school, after all. All this conjecture seems to further support the notion that Rousey is a Darkner. However, there are issues with the Rousey is a Darkner theory.
Here we go.
For starters, Rousey disappearing when he gets knocked out and dropping his clothes on the floor is largely unique to him. And while neither Chris nor Susie do this when they lose their HP, no other Darkner does this either. Even when using Snowgrave on a Darkner, they don't drop their clothes on the floor the way Rousey does.
This is a bit... So using the Snowgrave thing still doesn't quite sit well with me, because the way he phrased it earlier was that usually when you drop... or you can't reduce a Darkner's HP below 0, because they'll flee instead, but you can hit a Darkner at, like, as low HP as you want, with as strong enough of an attack as you want. They'll take damage from that, and then they'll flee. So it's not that they can't go below 1 HP, it's that if you deal damage that would kill them, for some reason they don't, and instead they flee. And as far as I know, Snowgrave is the only way to circumvent that. It's not to do with how much damage it deals, it's like a specific flag that it has to, trigger in the programming to make the Darkners actually die. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison, like, unless you were to hit Rousey with Snowgrave, like, how would you actually tell if it would have the same effect? Because nothing else can have that effect on other Darkners as Snowgrave does.
Furthermore, while Rousey being informed about the Dark World is interesting, the fact that he seems to know way more than any other Darkner is rather suspicious. Why does Rousey know all this stuff about the prophecy and about how fountains work, while neither the Spade King nor the Queen have any such knowledge?
Well, I'd assume it's Ralsei's origin in the, or I should say more generally, the origin of the Dark World in the closet is sort of the mystery there, because Ralsei is like the only one in it. He seems to have more power than a normal Darkner. He seems to have more knowledge. And he says that the fountain in there is made of pure darkness in one line, and he implies the other ones aren't somehow, so that's why he can traverse between the different worlds. So that's all very vague and mysterious, but that's not to say that it's unexplained. It's that we haven't actually seen where that might be going. But there's enough sort of potential weirdness with Ralsei's situation that could explain any of this. We just don't have that information yet.
Those characters are also royalty who rule over dark worlds, just like Rousey, so why do they know so much less than him?
Yeah, it's not that they're royalty, it's that the closet fountain is implied to be somehow just special. It's called the Grand Fountain, I think, at some point. So, yeah. Something to do with that. Not that we know anything about that yet, but that would be sort of the default, we just don't know what that means yet.
Also, how does Rousey know Chris and Susie's names? If he was a Darkner who had been trapped in his castle town for ages, then how could he know the names of two specific Lightners?
That's a fair point. That's pretty sus. I think... Yeah, Susie's weird there. I was going to say, we don't know what Ralsei was up to beforehand. If Ralsei is, fibbing about his backstory a little bit, and maybe does actually know Chris beforehand, or if we follow, the Horn Headband theory, then, Chris would have, ostensibly, I'm not really sure how the Horn Headband theory doesn't really concern itself with the details of how the Horn Headband got into the closet, or whether the closet was a Dark World before or afterward, or who created the Dark Fountain, so that's all still very much up in the air, but it's at least somewhat conceivable that, Ralsei could have been in communication with other Lighteners before, such as Chris, and is concealing that from the player. I don't know.
That is suspicious as all get out. Then there's the fact that Rousey can cross between dark worlds, which is a power that no other Darkner has demonstrated. Technically, Lancer crossed over into Rousey's castle town.
Oh yeah, he sure as fuck did.
At the start of Chapter 1, but this is implied to only be possible because those two dark worlds are physically adjacent to each other in the light world.
Yeah, but even then, yeah, there is a door, fair enough. But that's also how Ralsei says he gets to the cyber world, is he just fucking walked, right? So, I don't know. Is there just another door, behind a secret passage somewhere, behind a locked door in the castle, maybe somewhere in the cliffs? I don't know. It's we can't access but it might not be fundamentally different. I'm not sure.
The grand doors that we see here are pretty strongly implied.
Yeah,
to be
that's
the dark
true.
world
It's kind of
equivalent to this door
kind of
that
like
we
an
see in the
analog
light
to the
world.
other door.
My point
Yeah.
being, the only time we've seen a Darkner travel between dark worlds that are not directly physically connected in the light world was when Rousey traveled from his castle town all the way to the cyber world, which is inside the library. Why can Rousey do this, but no other Darkners can? We never see any other Card Kingdom Darkners show up in the cyber world, so why...
Oh yeah, okay, in chat, Antagonist says, the actual quote is that Ralsei hurried over, nothing about walking, so that's fair enough. It's left completely up in the air how he actually physically moved himself to that location.
Is Rousey the only one who makes that journey? Lancer and Rule's card were only able to show up because Chris carried them through the light world. So overall, this seems to suggest that Rousey has some unique powers that other Darkners don't have. This seems to include his ability to not turn into a statue while in other dark worlds. Both Lancer and Rule's card turn into statues while within the cyberworld, and Rousey states that this is because they are from a different dark world, and thus they don't belong in this world.
I'd assume at least what's implied is that, like, in the castle town, the dark fountain there can sustain all of the other Darkners, no matter where they come from, which is how you're able to gather them all there. And because that is Rousey's own fountain, maybe that means that he is allowed to go into the other ones. It's very vague logic. I'm not pretending it isn't, but that seems to be what's implied so far, at least. And that doesn't explain why, again. But Rousey he seems to have special status for some reason because of the nature of the fountain in the castle town. It's just not normal somehow, even compared to the other dark fountains.
This seems to suggest that Rousey, who does not turn into a statue, has some special property that protects him from this effect. That might work as evidence that he is not a Darkner. However, Rousey specifically says that a Darkner may not belong, which seems to imply that certain Darkners could travel to other Dark Worlds provided they were compatible with that Dark World's theme. For example, the cyberworld was all about robots, computers, and the internet, so Lancer, a physical playing card, did not match the world's theme and thus turned to stone. Same with Rule's card.
Chad is saying that Starwalker also appears. The whole video falls apart because Starwalker can actually travel between the worlds too. Shit.
However, the thrash machine that Rules brought with him never turns to stone, despite being directly implied to be alive.
Is it? I don't know how it would be alive. It was built by the, like, yeah, like the thrash machine's not even from the other world. It was built by Sweet Cap and Cakes in their shop. Like, that's like, Rules card went in, commissioned them from the blueprints that he found from chapter 1. It's this funny circumstance. So there's nothing out of order here. Like, the machine was built in the cyber world, so it shouldn't turn to stone.
The reason for this could be that the thrash machine is compatible with Cyberworld due to it being a machine, and thus it never turns into a statue. As such, you could make the argument that Rousey is such a submissive character.
Oh, there's the line. All right, that was being memed pretty hard in chat. I don't think I even need to elaborate. Use your imagination.
That he can conform to the will of any given dark world. Case in point, he allowed...
But that's actually being drawn to, like, it's because he's submissive? Like, he doesn't have an identity that he can mold himself? Like, that doesn't seem to be... I don't know if you can say it's down to their personality, whether or not they fit in. That wasn't the point that he was making before, even, with the machine fitting the theme or not. I don't know what fucking theme a goat person is. I don't really know what conclusion to draw, even if you follow that line of logic that it depends on, like, you have to fit the theme. What does it mean for Rousey to fit the theme of a world or not? He's just a furry from Undertale.
Allows Queen to turn him into one of her butlers.
Yes, furries fit into any fictional
Lancer
world.
and
Yeah.
Rule's card are such boisterous personalities that they could not fit in. Although, I think it's interesting that Rule's card turned into stone much later than Lancer. In fact, Rule's card...
Well, it's because he hadn't had his boss fight yet. Toby wanted to get the boss fight in first.
...never fully transforms at all. His head never turns to stone. This could be because, much like how Rousey allowed Queen to make him a butler, Rule's card just wanted to be the Queen's head minion. As such, since Rules was at least trying to fit in, maybe that's why he never fully turned to stone.
Tenuous. Like, it's such a kind of weird and vague point to try to define how much a character wants or does not want to fit in. Like, Lancer did nothing except sit in your backpack and, like, eat shoes for the entire chapter. And no, I guess he comes out and lets you out of prison. I don't know whether that's implying that you have to be going along with the Queen in order to fit in, but, like, that's not the will of the fountain. That's the Queen. It's a different thing. Yeah, it's too vague to really put any stock in, I'd say, as far as, like, this point goes.
By contrast, Lancer clearly has no interest in
Oh, I
conforming,
know this is
so
mild
he
so
turned
far.
to stone rather
I know this is
quickly
mild.
once he left Chris's pocket. Of course, I could be wrong about why they turn to stone when they do, but my point is that the way Rousey phrases this line leaves it very open to interpretation.
Sure does. I'll say that much. It's a lot of Ralsei's explanations about the Dark World mechanics are just very vague, which by extension means that Toby's explanations of the Dark World mechanics are very vague. Whether or not that's intentional, I don't know. Up to us to decide, I guess.
As such, we can't outright say that Rousey not turning into stone is proof that he's not a Darkner.
Yes. I'd say, I mean, some of the evidence that we went over already for being, Ralsei being a Darkner, there's like a difference here, because like this evidence for Ralsei being a Lightener, it's like, it's weird. Being a Lightener maybe would explain it, but there were other possible explanations that maybe we just haven't gotten yet. Whereas stuff like Ralsei collapsing into a pile of clothes upon taking lethal damage, I don't see any other explanation if Ralsei is a Lightener that you could make that make sense, right? The pieces of evidence, like, they're not equally weighted so far when you have stuff like that.
However, there is still one rather big piece of evidence to suggest that Rousey is more than what he claims to be. And that is the fact that he looks and behaves almost identically to Azrael.
Ah, Azrael in Undertale. Interesting. That the keyword is behaves, obviously. Like, he looks like Azrael. Obviously, he looks like Azrael. What does it mean that he behaves like Azrael, though? We don't get a lot of Azrael interaction in Undertale, actually. There's not a whole lot of personality to go off of, and everything we see of Azrael was after he'd been like a psychopathic murder flower for like untold eons in a time loop, so I don't know. I don't know if I'd actually describe Ralsei as being like Azrael, even. It's kind of weird.
No other Darkner that we've met thus far has looked so similar to a character from the Light World. In fact, people specifically comment on the fact that Ralsei looks so much like the Dreamer family. Noelle grew up alongside Azrael, and thus has a line where she seems to make note of how similar Ralsei looks to Azrael. Susie also has such a line as she outright states that Ralsei looks a lot like Toriel.
Yep.
Why would he look like that?
Horn headband theory makes a really good explanation, and also the picture one that you brought up before. Either of those would explain that.
If someone made a drawing of Azrael and exposed it to a dark fountain, would that create a character like Ralsei? We see multiple drawings throughout the school, so it's feasible that someone like Chris made a drawing of Azrael wearing a Halloween costume, and then it got exposed to the Dark Fountain. But even if that was used to explain Ralsei's physical appearance, what it doesn't really explain is Ralsei's personality. Ralsei has a nearly identical attitude.
I mean, yeah, don't be killed, but that's like, I mean, I'm looking at you, Azrael. That's some bullshit. You were just like the murder flower until like 10 minutes ago, and now you're all, you know, don't kill, don't be killed, live and let live. Like for that mostly wasn't. Like, yeah, fair enough. Like before Azrael died in the whole thing where he absorbed Kara's soul and they went to the surface, he was the one who stopped them from killing anyone. So yeah, okay, Azrael is naturally inclined to be a pacifist, and so is Ralsei. But is that all?
And worldview to that of Azrael. They both advocate against violence, they're both sweet and kind, they both befriend the player, and they both seem to know what...
I mean, everyone befriends the player in Undertale, basically.
Saving and loading
are. Okay, this is... This is Azrael in Undertale, though. Azrael in Deltarune wouldn't know about saving and loading. He was never exposed to meta shit like that. Aside from any argument about like whether it's an alternate universe, a timeline, circumventing all of that, there's no reason why Azrael in Deltarune would have the same meta knowledge as Azrael from Undertale. The circumstances are completely different.
My point being that Ralsei being some sort of alternate version of Azrael definitely makes it feel like Ralsei...
Like, all we have, basically, if you take away the things that I was raising complaints about is that Ralsei is a pacifist and is nice. I don't think that's strong. I think that's very very weak, honestly. Just those 2 points.
Either is not a darkener or that he is some sort of very special darkener. Speaking of which, let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and Ralsei is an anagram of Asriel. Very good point, Olivia, in chat. It doesn't change the discussion, but it's, Asriel's an anagram of cereal.
Is Ralsei a lightener? Well, right out the gate, we can safely say that Ralsei is not a human. So the real question is...
But how? He's wearing a fursuit. Come on, prove it. Prove it wrong. It's just his persona. Sorry about my dogs, by the way. I'll play the video in mute while they bark.
Whether or not Ralsei is a monster. Well, obviously, Ralsei looking and acting so much like Asriel, who we know is a monster, definitely supports the idea that Ralsei may be one as well.
I mean, I made the kind of a joke about it before, but like the Darkeners, as far as aesthetics go, they're just fucking monsters again. There's no difference. There's no rules for what a monster can look like. There's no rules for what a Darkener can look like. So saying that a Darkener looking like a monster is meaningless. I don't think there's any appreciable difference between the aesthetics.
In fact, a common theory is that not only is Ralsei a lightener, but that he is literally Asriel.
That's a common theory for some reason. I don't understand why. I literally don't understand why. It's just something I know that people believe, and I've never looked into it because I've been afraid.
Of course, there are issues with this theory. Most notably, there are significant physical differences between the two, what with Ralsei having pink horns and glasses, which is something Asriel does not possess. There's also the fact that Queen rather blatantly...
The pink horns are kind of weird, but I mean, all the lighteners all look... I'm fucking plays just like impulsively. I'm now arguing for the Ralsei is Asriel theory by accident, but the lighteners all change appearance in the Dark World, mostly from like colors and stuff. Like Chris has blue skin suddenly, so I don't see it as I don't see it as at all of a stretch that Asriel would have pink horns and glasses after going into the Dark World.
Does not have...
I still don't think that he's Ralsei, but just in general.
A room for Ralsei, despite clearly having a room for Asriel. Also, Noelle grew up alongside Asriel.
Wait a minute, what was that?
Rather blatantly does not have a room for Ralsei, despite clearly having a room for Asriel.
Well, that's because the rooms come from people who have used the computers in the computer lab. That's why they're all full of search history stuff. If Ralsei wasn't in the light world using the computers, then Queen wouldn't have a personalized room for him.
Also, Noelle grew up alongside Asriel, and she barely takes notice of Ralsei, which implies that Ralsei looks so different from Asriel that the idea of him being Asriel...
You're showing that with footage of Noelle saying it looks kind of like Asriel. I mean, it's a thing in Chapter 2, which is weird by itself, right? That it seems like all the characters are doing the best to just ignore Ralsei's existence. Like, Noelle hardly comments on him. Queen hardly comments on him. She, forgets that he's there half the time. So that's not unique to Noelle. But there's the one time Noelle does acknowledge Ralsei, almost ever, is to say that he looks like probably Asriel. So I don't know what this is supposed to be about here.
Asriel never even crosses Noelle's mind. So while there is some room to argue that Ralsei is...
Noelle is busy staring at Susie's ass for almost the entire time that she's a playable member of the party. So Ralsei's behind her. She ain't looking at him. He's not part of his world at that point.
Lightener, I think there is much less room to argue that Ralsei is literally Asriel.
I mean, I'm in agreement there, at least. Although all the evidence I think you brought up against it, I disagree with. But let's set that aside for now.
He's clearly connected to Asriel in some way, but I don't think they're the same person given what we know. Regardless, Ralsei looking like a lightener definitely works as evidence that he may also be a lightener, even if he's not literally Asriel.
He looks like a specific lightener. I mean, if you can show that Ralsei has a connection to Asriel in any way, you've already gotten past that point. We don't need that doesn't need to mean that he's a lightener. Like if we have Ralsei being the horn headband, then sure, he would end up looking like a so the horn headband was like Chris's way of pretending to be like the same kind of monster as his family, right? So it sort of makes sense that the horn headband would become some kind of, child boss monster looking character, sort of like Asriel. That would make sense. If it was a picture of Asriel, like the green crayon, then it would look like the picture. So I think either of those would explain it without Rousey having to be a lightener.
Ralsei can wield magic, just like Susie and Noelle, and he even directly teaches Susie how to use healing magic, which pretty much confirms that Ralsei uses the same type of magic as the monsters.
Okay, this is... I have a problem with this. There's only one human in the whole game, right? There's a single human in the entire game of Deltarune, which is Chris. And because they can't use magic in the Dark World, I don't know. We have one data point, and the monsters, they all seem to be able to. But is that because they're a human, or is that because they're like a night class and just don't use magic? Because the monsters don't seem to be able to use magic in the light world, like Noelle says as much. I wish that we could heal things in the real world with just a spell, like referring to her father. And again, like there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down about like whether the monsters can still use magic. I don't think they can at all, like, because you have this Toriel's stovetop is now caked with batter, whereas the exact same stove asset in Undertale had dialogue about it being clean because Toriel uses fire magic instead. So, and there's more stuff, but again, that's like a whole rabbit hole you can go down. And I'm assuming this is part of like the Jaru verse that we've entered, is that we just assume that monsters have magic because it's obviously an alternate timeline, so that we have to have the same rules as Undertale, even though that creates a billion contradictions. So we're just assuming that monsters have magic, and therefore that this implies this one thing about Ralsei. So clearly I'm not on board, but I think I understand the logic.
There's also the fact that, thus far, we've only ever had lighteners in our party. We've never had any other dark...
What the fuck do you mean? We've only had lighteners in the party? The first two people who joined the party are Chris and Ralsei, one of whom is apparently a darkener, according to, conventional knowledge. So what? I want to listen to that again. That can't be right.
Magic as the monsters. There's also the fact that, thus far, we've only ever had lighteners in our party. We've never had any other darkeners
except for the one darkener. Like, what is that? That's just not... did he just say that wrong? We've never had... Like, we're assuming at this point, we're trying to prove that Ralsei is not a darkener. You can't use the fact that Ralsei's not a darkener to prove that. Like, that's obvious, right?
If you don't include Ralsei.
Okay, if you don't include Ralsei, what's the point then?
We've never had any other darkeners if you don't include Ralsei. So that could be interpreted as evidence that he just isn't a darkener.
No, that's bullshit. What the fuck? No, you that's begging the question. That's if you assume that Ralsei is not a darkener, then you can then use that as evidence that Ralsei is not a darkener. No, cut that out. That's not a good argument at all.
Then there's the fact that he clearly knows what the layout of the school is. He might just know this because he's seen the layout of the school in the Dark World, but it could also be evidence that Ralsei has been to the Light World, which...
Yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, yeah, you could explain that as like the grand door in the castle town is to the east, which is the same place as the, as the other classroom would be. But like the fact that Ralsei even knows that it's a classroom is kind of like, So again, that's like a Ralsei sus point, but I've mentioned some alternate explanations, like if Ralsei was in contact with any lighteners before the story and is like concealing that information, then you suddenly have explanations for all this stuff, like how he knows Chris and Susie's names, how he knows the school layout. Like presumably someone had to create this fountain with Ralsei in it. So like the night, someone else, I don't know, but like that would have been an opportunity for Ralsei to like communicate with a lightener to some degree. Just in very general, I don't want to get into specifics because it's all speculation, but there's lots of room to assume that Ralsei may have talked to a lightener at some point and gotten a bit of some info, a bit of an agenda, who knows.
Which is something that a darkener cannot do. Then there's the fact that Rousey traveled all the way to the cyber world at the start of Chapter 2. As far as we know, there are no pathways in the Dark World connecting the castle town to the cyber world, which may suggest that Rousey traveled to the light.
Chat says, what if Azrael's the one who made the Dark Fountain? Like, neat. I don't want to get into all these different, like, speculative explanations for what could have happened, because we just fundamentally don't know. But the point is that, like, someone, whoever did, could have been the person who gave Azrael, or Rousey, this knowledge. But fundamentally, the stuff he's bringing up is evidence for Rousey not fitting in as a darkener, Rousey maybe being a lightener. It is just not conclusive evidence. That has alternate explanations. It just sort of maybe nudges the discussion a little bit more toward that direction.
World in order to reach the library. That would explain why, when we see him for the first time in the cyber world, he appears coming from the west, as if he entered the cyber world through the same entrance that Susie and Chris used. Remember that the castle town is to the northeast of the library, so if Rousey had traveled to the cyber world by using some sort of path.
Okay, my memory's a bit foggy, but are there more than one path? When you go into the first Dark World in Chapter 1, there's like an alternate path from the cliffs that Susie came down. No, actually that came from the same entrance anyway, so I think it's just a bit inconsistent how exactly where you get spat out when you go into the Dark Worlds. Yeah, never mind about that, whatever.
Path through the Dark World, then shouldn't he have approached Chris and Susie coming from the east?
I mean, like, space is non-linear. I don't know. Like, if we don't even know how else he got there. Maybe he teleported. Maybe he jumped into the cauldron and it was like Dire Docks. He just got teleported in.
And not from the west? It's possible that Dark World travel is more complicated than what we've seen thus far.
But first we have to talk about parallel universes.
But based off the way the Card Kingdom is physically located to the east of Castletown, and thus reflects the Light World layout, it seems probable that the Cyber World would be physically located to the southwest of the Castletown. So, if Rousey approached from that direction through the Dark World, why did he show up coming from the west? Furthermore, Rousey shows up extremely quickly in the cyber world. We know for a fact that traveling through a dark world takes a significantly longer period of time.
We also know they have doors in the dark world that let you teleport an arbitrary distance instantly, so I don't know. There seems to be a lot of time to spend on this one very specific point about which direction Rousey walks in from, but in general, it's a bit unexplained how he gets into the dark world, sure.
Then traveling through the light world. Case in point, the Card Kingdom was so big that it took the entirety of Chapter 1 to travel from one end to the other.
Okay, he's pressing the point. I'll just repeat mine. You have the teleportation doors that just let you immediately go from one side to the other if you want.
By contrast, once
the rules are hazy enough that you can have explanations like that.
You're in the light world, it only takes a few seconds to walk across the classroom that the Card Kingdom represented. And the cyber world is much farther away from the castle town than the Card Kingdom was. As such, if Rousey really did travel through the dark world to get to the cyber world, then how did he get there so quickly? Does he secretly have a teleporter that he hasn't shown us? If not, then the most logical explanation is that Rousey arrived so quickly because he traveled through the light world, which would imply that he might be a lightener. In fact, now that I think about it, how did Rousey get back to his castle town at the end of Chapter 1?
Yeah, I'm seeing in chat people are saying that you can definitely use Snowgrave on enemies that aren't birdly. So there you go. Facts.
1. We left Rousey right here, walked a few feet, sealed the fountain, and then returned to the light world. Once the fountain was sealed, Lancer and all the other Card Kingdom Darkners were stuck as mundane objects in this classroom, and Chris had to fetch them at the start of Chapter 2. And yet, Chris does not have to fetch Rousey.
I mean, fair point, but it's the same point as the last one, is that Rousey can travel between the dark worlds, whereas the other ones can't.
Rousey just shows up back in Castletown. In fact, after you seal the fountain in the cyberworld, Rousey once again just teleports to his castle town.
Right. That's a good point, actually. Once you seal the cyberworld fountain, all the Lighteners get spit back out. So the idea, and yeah, Rousey teleports back to the castle town, whereas you have to physically walk there. So if we were somehow going for an idea that Rousey physically walks into the library fountain after Chris and Susie go in, and that's how he appears, how does that explain when you come out? Like, Rousey would have to get spit out there, or like somehow walk past Chris and Susie in order to get back to the castle town if he's using the light world to get around. So it seems more like he's just sort of teleporting in the dark world somehow.
We don't carry him in our inventory, and we don't see him in the light world. So how on earth?
Chat says, I think it might be because Rousey is a physical object in his fountain. My main reasoning against that is because when you enter a dark world with a physical object that then becomes a character, that's animated as a sparkle coming out of Chris. And even when you bring in Rule's card to the Chapter 2 Dark World, you see him, one little sparkle comes out, which becomes Rule's card. So Toby's paying attention to details like that, and we don't see a sparkle for Rousey, so it's not like he's some object that Chris is carrying around.
Did Rousey get back? I'm beginning to think Rousey really can teleport. Well, regardless of exactly how Rousey is getting about, it's clearly something that no other Darkner can...
Okay, but this is the point he's done it himself, is the point that Rousey was a Lightener has now been weakened by the further evidence that the method of transit proposed by him being a Lightener doesn't even make sense in this other case where he has to get back to the castle town from the cyberworld. So it's sort of... It's just gone back to Rousey as special. The unique element of, like, oh, it could be explained by Rousey being a Lightener has now been lost completely.
Can do, which works as evidence of him potentially being a Lightener. And lastly...
Wait, what? Wait, no, do that again. Do that again.
Teleport. Well, regardless of exactly how Rousey is getting about, it's clearly something that no other Darkner can do, which works as evidence of him potentially being a Lightener.
No, that's what I just said. It's Lighteners can't teleport. Lighteners can traverse terrain using the light world. And the second example here, it doesn't work, even if Rousey is a Lightener. So, no. Rousey being special does not... specifically imply that he's a Lightener anymore. That part of the argument has actually been it's been lost in transit, basically.
And lastly, Rousey knowing so much about the light world could definitely be interpreted as evidence that he's more than a Darkner. He knows the school's layout, he knows about the concept of homework, he knows enough about technology to make a sleep mode joke, he calls Spampton a corrupted program, he knows something about the Angel, he knows what guns are, and of course he knows Susie and Chris.
We didn't. Rousey doesn't need to know what the gun is to get an ad for it. That's that joke was patched in because of the Rousey minigun memes, I think. So. The stupidest point ever to try to contradict, but I'm going to do it anyway. I maintain that Rousey doesn't need to know what a gun is to click on the machine gun ad.
Chris's names with
everything else is valid though. Like this is all actual evidence
without them ever telling him. That's a lot of knowledge for a Darkner who has never left his castle town before. Rousey, being a Lightener, would provide an explanation for a lot of this knowledge. However, that's where the evidence starts to turn against the Rousey is a Lightener theory. For one, Rousey is literally referred to as a dark world being in his description, and we have only ever seen him in the dark world. Furthermore, the fact that his knocked out animation is so different from the other Lighteners makes it very clear that Rousey is something different from them. In addition, Darkners are constantly recognizing Susie and Chris as Lighteners on sight, yet nobody ever addresses Rousey as a Lightener. The queen pretty much ignores Rousey and clearly does not consider him a candidate for becoming the new knight. And the Spade King rather blatantly refers to Rousey as the Lightner's patsy, which would be a rather strange thing to say if Rousey was also a Lightner. Furthermore, if Rousey really was a Lightner just like Chris and Susie, then he should have showed up in the empty classroom at the end of Chapter 1 and in the computer lab at the end of Chapter 2. The fact that...
Oh my god, he has destroyed the previous speculation about Rousey being a Lightner. Holy shit. That was monstrous. Wow. Alright, well, I wonder where the theory's going now.
That he doesn't either shows that he is not a Lightner, or it shows that he has powers like teleportation that no other Lightner...
Oh, I see the angle. I see the angle right at the beginning. He's like, all right, here's your 5 options here. You got to choose. And one of them was something that is neither a Darkner or a Lightner. So he's going for this sort of proof by contradiction, whereas Rousey makes sense neither as a Lightner nor as a Darkner. Therefore gets to be this weird other thing that he's going to make up on the spot. I bet that's the angle. He's taken the 2 contradictions and is using that sort of like from what's the logical saying? It's like from nonsense anything follows, I think. Is that if you have a contradiction you can use it to prove anything. Maybe I'm going overboard, but let's see how it plays out.
Possesses. Throw in the fact that Rousey knows way more about the dark world than the Lightners do, and the fact that Rousey makes it extremely clear that he's been living in the Castletown for a long time, and the fact that everything is a first for him, and all that just sort of combines to show that he probably isn't a Lightner. It just doesn't seem to add up given what we know. And if he really was a Lightner from the real world, then we would have to explain why there's this random monster in the world that just so happens to look nearly identical.
I mean, yeah, like I didn't even get that far into the logic. As if Rousey was a Lightner, it would just be like another Asriel in Hometown somewhere. That's so fucked.
To Asriel, and happens to have a name that is an anagram of...
Like, I was assuming there'd be some other, like, weird supernatural explanation for, like, oh, he's a dead Lightner. He's a jar of ashes that someone takes in, and then he becomes the new Lightner, but he's not a Lightner in the light world, so that's how he gets around it. Something weird like that.
Of Asriel. Rousey may be more than just a Darkner, but it just doesn't make sense logistically for him to be a Lightner. Not without some crazy plot twists like Asriel having a twin brother or something like that.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, let's summarize. The options for what Rousey could be are as follows.
He's totally doing it. It's going to be the 5th one. That's the only way this goes.
A human, a monster, Asriel, a Darkner...
Why is Asriel, again, his own fucking option? Why is Asriel just there?
Or something unique. Rousey being a human is so absurd that it can be ignored. Rousey being Asriel has so many problems that it can also probably be ignored. That leaves us with Rousey either being a monster, a Darkner, or something entirely unique. The main focus of the discourse in the community has been over whether Rousey is a monster or a Darkner, and as we've just seen, neither option really...
Yeah, I absolutely called this. Okay, for the record, the way I'd resolve this is just to say that Rousey is a Darkner, he just has weird properties that haven't been explained yet, but there's no reason they couldn't be explained, and it's not like they haven't been promised an explanation or hinted at, because Rousey is constantly implying that the Castletown Dark Fountain, his fountain, it's pure darkness, it's the Grand Fountain, it's special, it can sustain all the other Darkners. And we know that it is special because, yeah, there is no other fountain that can sustain all the other Darkners. So something is special about that. So essentially, as long as you have that as an unexplained point, then that justifies, or at least could justify, basically anything that's weird about Rousey. Except for like the light world knowledge, but I've already given my ideas on like how that could possibly be explained. So there's enough reason to like maybe doubt this a little bit, but there's absolutely nothing that rules it out completely, because we're working with incomplete information right now anyway. I definitely think the safest bet is that Ralsei is actually a Darkner, because there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence for that. But yeah, this is going to go to the 5th one, and then we're going to go. Then we're going to lose our undies, basically, I think.
It works perfectly. There are a lot of things Ralsei can do that neither a monster nor a Darkner can. He implies he's a Darkner, and he's described as a Dark World being, but that doesn't explain all his peculiarities. As such, I think it's safe to say that the correct answer to what is Ralsei is that he's something unique. That conclusion, that Ralsei is a special entity, is not a new one. Many people have theorized that since he's the guardian of the Grand Fountain, perhaps that grants him some sort of unique powers.
Oh, there we go.
After all, if Ralsei's fountain can bring any Darkner to life, then wouldn't it make sense for Ralsei, the guardian of this fountain, to be capable of living in any dark world?
Hey, that's what I said. Yeah, we got to it. It's only half an hour and we got to it.
It has some narrative logic to it. His fountain can help a Darkner no matter what dark world they're from, and Ralsei can go to any dark world to recruit those Darkners. Ralsei is the one who introduces the recruiting mechanic, so it stands to reason that he may have been created with the specific purpose of recruiting other Darkners to his castle town. And if that was the case, Ralsei being granted the ability to survive in any dark world would make sense. However, the idea that Ralsei gets all his unique attributes as a result of being the guardian of the Grand Fountain has issues.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Namely, it doesn't answer all the questions. It doesn't explain Ralsei's connection to Azrael. It doesn't explain...
That would be explained by either the Horde headband or the green crayon picture.
...why Ralsei behaves so differently from other Darkners.
How differently does Ralsei behave? Was that ever touched on before in the video, Ralsei's behavior, as opposed to just Ralsei's, like, abilities and stuff? Because I don't think Ralsei has... The Darkner's behavior is so diverse, I don't think you can really make that argument. Like...
Ralsei said that Darkners reflect the will of their fountain, but what will could the Grand Fountain have that would justify creating an entity like Ralsei?
I don't know. I don't fucking know anything. Whatever the will is, it did it. Like, what is that point?
Furthermore, who created the Grand Fountain? Has it?
We don't need to answer these questions to know to say that Ralsei is a Darkner, though. Like, these are just unanswered questions that are independent from Ralsei.
Always existed? If not, then who created it? Was it made by the Knight? If so, why would the Knight want Ralsei to exist?
Maybe it wasn't created by the Knight. We don't know. This is going to be like a much later reveal, clearly, is the dynamic of like why... This is one of the biggest mysteries in the game, actually, is why does this one dark fountain just exist in the closet? And it's not even implied that the Knight necessarily created it. It's the special one that's... so that we're obviously going to find that out at some point, but it doesn't have to be the Knight.
And if the Knight didn't create Ralsei, then who did? And why?
It doesn't matter. We don't know that yet. We don't have to have the answer for that. But it doesn't mean it's a contradiction or anything wrong with it. We just don't have that information yet, but it's obviously going to be revealed.
Needless to say, there's a ton of unanswered questions here, and none of them have any clear explanations.
But what's wrong with that? That seems to be implying that there's something like, we should be able to figure this out. Like, we just don't know yet.
Which brings us to the final theory I will be discussing in this video.
All right, begin Act 6.
This is the theory that I personally came up with. This theory that I have makes a lot of sense given what we know about Undertale and Deltarune, and I feel like it works on many levels. I think my theory potentially explains what Ralsei is, why he looks and acts like Azrael, why Ralsei seems to possess the powers of both a Darkner and a Lightner, and also why he seems to be so interested in Chris specifically. First off, let's have a closer look at...
Okay, So I should clarify once again. I know how this ends. This is ultimately going to be some kind of theory about Chris killing Azrael. Not in the future, but like already when you start the game, Chris has killed Azrael, and that's about all I know at this point. That's where we're gonna work up to though with this, and yikes. That's what I can say off the bat without even watching this is that is just a very extreme kind of out there long shot idea. That would be a crazy plot twist, like if that was actually true. So it is, in my estimation, the weirder, the more outlandish your theory is, the more evidence you need for that. So I hope he has a shit ton of evidence, is all I can say.
What a darkner actually is. A darkner is a sentient life form that is created when an object is exposed to the power of a dark fountain. Dark fountains are created through determination. The fact that dark fountains bring mundane objects to life makes perfect sense given what we know about determination. In Undertale, it specifically states that imbuing something with determination will literally grant it the will to live. So,
Undertale, I keep getting hung up on this. Like, fundamentally, this is a point that we disagree on, and it could go either way, is like whether determination is the same thing as it was in Undertale. And in the Jaru verse, it absolutely is. But that's not something that I'm really on board with, but whatever.
the power of a dark fountain basically just showers everything nearby with the power of determination, and as a result, everything in its radius is temporarily brought to life so long as they continue to be showered with the dark fountain's power. In short, darkners are mundane, inanimate objects that are brought to life through the power of determination. But wait.
Chad is saying, Toby says Deltarune is not Undertale. Do we even want to get into that? Long story short, there's obviously connections, even though Toby said that. And he's obviously deliberately made the connections quite clear, so that is not an argument to say that we shouldn't be trying to connect the two games in general. I don't know why I paused the video just to address that. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye and it triggered me.
Doesn't that all sound eerily familiar?
Yeah.
Where have we heard of this?
You already
before?
showed the True Lab log.
A mundane object that was granted intelligence by being exposed to determination? A mundane object that gained incredible
You're really laying it on thick, buddy, okay? Like
powers after being brought to life? A mundane object
the video is already like an hour and 20 minutes long. Just say it's Flowey, please.
that was granted the personality and memories of Azrael Dreamer?
That's right. It was Newbird.
Have you figured it out yet? We're talking about Flowey. The similarities between Flowey and Rousey are numerous.
Oh god, the fucking ominous tone here.
They both teach you about the nature of your soul. They are neither human nor monster. They are the first members of their...
Okay, well, in Undertale, Flowey being neither human nor monster was like a unique thing, and in Deltarune, there's just like an entire race of other people who aren't already. I don't know if that's like a direct parallel.
Species.
I mean, like a rock is neither human nor monster, except for the rocks that are monsters. Like, but you know what I mean. Like there are things that aren't human or monster, other than Flowey.
That you speak to.
Wait a minute, what was that?
They are the first members of their species that you speak to.
I guess that's a fair enough parallel. It's like when you drop down, the first one you meet is, yeah. I guess Lancer is technically fulfills that equivalent for the battle system, though, because Lancer immediately just ambushes you and starts shooting bullets toward you.
They're both introduced only to get interrupted by an interloper using fire. They are both alternate versions of Azrael Dreamer. They are both clearly hiding something from the player.
I mean, these are like parallels, but these are the kind of stuff that I could see as just being what do you call it? Outside the narrative. It's just like, you know, calling back to Undertale a bit. That's usually a bad argument though, so I'm not going to rely on that too heavily, but that's what my gut reaction would be anyway, is like these parallels do exist, but it's just because it's the first character you meet in both games, have sort of a similar, they both do the tutorial, they both do them both getting interrupted is kind of a specific thing, but like you could argue that that's just like a callback gag, like the Flowey getting yeeted by Toriel. I don't know.
They are both princes of their respective kingdoms.
I mean, that's because Asriel was a prince too, and like we know that Ralsei is just like a fucking Asriel Mark II. He's obviously supposed to make us think of Asriel, so.
They both know about the saving and loading feature, and they both ultimately befriend the human protagonist.
Why is that like the big closer? Again, like every fucking character in Undertale befriends the human protagonist. Most characters in Deltarune so far have befriended the human protagonist.
While embracing a pacifist philosophy.
Okay, Flowey didn't do that, but that was afterward, okay? Like, maybe if this is being just saying like Ralsei is like Undertale's Asriel, fair enough, because Ralsei is like Asriel, but I thought we were going like Flowey specific points here. Pacifism is not a Flowey specific point. That is very much all variants of Undertale Asriel except for Flowey. So
The similarities between Flowey and Ralsei.
Chat says, and both have the same amount of posts on E621. Ah, shit.
Say are overwhelming.
It's not overwhelming, man. It's like whelming at best. That's like a few things. It's a parallel, but it's not like... It's not got my panties in a twist. I'm not excited from that. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a parallel to Asriel. It's a callback to Asriel. But those are pretty vague points. Like, there's no silver bullets in there. It's just a few kind of like circumstantial similarities.
This leads us to a very important question. Why? Why are they so similar? Well, to understand the answer, you must first ask the correct question.
I really wish the first half of the video didn't have this like weird dramatic tone to it. It was just like going through the evidence and it was rather nice. I don't know what this is all about now.
The correct question. The question that needs to be asked in order to understand any of this. The question that I believe could solve everything about Ralsei's confounding existence. The horrible question that will lead us down a path of tragedy and misery is this.
This is like a third of a page that was just that one sentence, I bet. Like, wow. That was the second time. So I don't know, I'm getting so hung up on like the quirks of the video. I shouldn't do that.
If a darkener is created when an object is exposed to a dark fountain, then what would happen if that object was imbued with the essence of a monster?
So, yeah, okay, so this has been a theory that like has been floating around for a while, is that you could use a dark fountain to revive a dead person or something, using potentially monster dust, potentially, if we carry over the fucking Bane of My Existence, the essence lore from Undertale, where if you put a monster's dust on a thing, then their essence is in that thing, and then you can use it to revive them. So either one of those two methods. What if you stuck that inside a dark fountain? Maybe logic dictates that that person gets brought back to life. That's a fair enough point.
In other words, what would happen if an object coated in the dust of a dead monster was granted the will to live?
Like it would come back to life. It's fair enough.
There used to only...
Yes, Essence is canon. That's not a joke. It is. I wish it wasn't. Essence is canon, though. In Undertale, mind you, we haven't heard of it in Deltarune, and I hope to God it does not come back, but yep.
Only be one answer to that question. But now, I believe there's two. Ralsei isn't just a darkener. Ralsei isn't just a lightener. He is both. He is the essence of a lightener given the power of a darkener. He is the product of a mundane object combined with the essence of a dead monster being brought to life through the power of determination.
I mean, like, that's one explanation, man, but you already talked about the horn headband and the Ralsei drawing ideas. Like, wouldn't either one of those just also be potential? I mean, again, it doesn't explain Ralsei's special powers, but it explains the correspondence to Asriel, and I've said 50 times so far, and I'm probably going to keep saying it because I don't know, I can't help myself, but there are other explanations in the future that we could easily get for why Ralsei has these special powers, so I don't see the need to like freak out right now because you don't have the answer right now and jump to this conclusion just to sort of skip to when we have the answers for that.
Ralsei is literally the Deltarune version of Flowey. That's why they have so much in common. They were both mundane objects, coated in monster dust, imbued with the power.
Okay, why would that have that effect though? Like, cause and effect. He's saying the cause is that Ralsei is Asriel's dust or something that has been reanimated. Effect is the similarities that he was talking about previously. None of those are related. The similarities are to do with like the structure of the narrative. Ralsei is the first person you meet. Ralsei is he gets blown up by Lancer, which is the same as an Undertale. Like, those are all sort of extra textual callbacks, and those wouldn't be explained even if you have Ralsei in this universe is generated by the same process that made Flowey and Undertale.
Of determination and granted the personality.
Like, all it would explain, all this explains is why Asriel or why Ralsei has like the appearance and maybe arguably the personality of Asriel. And also I guess the idea is that like the weird powers get ascribed to being like half lightener or something
Of Asriel.
But like the idea that there's so many parallels between Flowey and Ralsei, we got to justify all these parallels. That was a different thing, and I don't think that's even been addressed by this. That's what I was trying to point out.
That is why Ralsei is labeled as a dark world being and not just a darkener. It's true that Ralsei is from the dark world, but to call him a darkener wouldn't be accurate. He is more than any darkener, just like how Flowey is more than any flower. Of course, you may be wondering, why does Ralsei have emotions when Flowey didn't?
But I have to think about this one. Darkners, none of the Darkners have souls. Well, we don't even know that. We don't even know if Darkners have souls or not. It's unclear whether Darkners have souls. They all seem to have emotions just fine, though. Whereas in Undertale, specifically, both monsters and humans without souls were unable to feel compassion. So we don't know if that... We have to carry over that piece of lore first to Deltarune, and then, if we assume that works the same way with monsters and humans, then to, like, Darkners. So, like, fuck knows how that even works at that point, whether a Darkner needs a soul to feel emotions or not. That's like asking why this happens to Flowey, but why this happens to a Darkner is, I don't know. It just seems like a weird, long-distance connection.
Why do any Darkners have emotions if the process that created them is so similar to the process that created Flowey?
Why do any of them have emotions? That's what you're asking now? Like, I'd argue that it's because it's not the same process and it's not actually related. It's two different games, but...
Don't you need a soul to feel emotions?
In Undertale, you did. For humans, I keep saying the same thing. I pause it too early, and then you continues the point, and then I say my argument again. I'm sorry about that. I'm getting stuck in a loop here.
Well, to put it simply, no. You don't need a soul to feel emotions. Despite popular belief...
Oh god, wait a minute. This isn't going the way I thought it was. Okay, let's get this right clear real quick. You don't need a soul to feel emotions in Deltarune. That specific way to phrase it isn't correct. You need a soul to feel compassion. which that's what Flowey experiences when he loses his soul, basically. I think the argument we're going to get here is that Flowey actually could feel compassion and love and all that the whole time, and was just repressing it or somehow otherwise traumatized, but it had nothing to do with the soul. I think that's the argument we're going to hear.
Flowey did have emotions. He struggled to feel love and compassion, but he demonstrated a variety of other emotions.
Okay, that's never mind. Never mind, we agree.
During his time, he laughed at things he found funny. He enjoyed the company of Papyrus and found him amusing. He felt fear at the notion of dying, and he felt enough compassion to...
Wait, chat says wait till we get to the trauma diagram. What the fuck? What a threatening sentence.
help out his mother when she was blackout drunk. As we see...
Oh, hell yeah, the alarm clock dialogue's coming in now. I love that. It's still a bit unclear to me whether or not that's actually canon, because that's kind of crazy if it is. Like, that means Flowey came to the surface. Like, holy shit, that's pretty nuts if that's canon, but anyway.
Alarm clock app. Flowey always had emotions. He just struggled to feel love. Why did he struggle to feel love?
How did we get here? We started off with, like, Ralsei is the same as Flowey, and now we're talking about why Flowey can't.
It's because of how he was created. Flowey was created when a nightmarish machine forcibly extracted the determination of murdered human children.
What are all these big emotionally charged words being thrown at us here? Is this going to be the trauma argument after all? This is going to be like, oh, Flowey was just... He just got real fucked up. He just got But, like, that's... I don't see... Okay, I should just let him finish the fucking argument and then reply. What am I doing?
And injected it into a flower. He was created under hellish circumstances, so obviously he would struggle to feel empathy.
No, that is literally the argument. Okay, fuck. That sucks. I'm sorry, but... like, that is a plot point. It's very much a thing. Like, Flowey... Azrael before was a perfectly normal person, and then afterward, after like dying and being brought back, suddenly and discreetly could not feel love. And this is like a known thing. This is probably within universe. It's believed that you need a soul to feel love. So to question that and explain it away with like another thing, like Flowey was traumatized or something, it's unfalsifiable, but it's also like we have an existing plot point for this. Why would you want to remove that like specific sort of in-universe mechanic of like the soul lets you feel compassion and replace it with some generic explanation that could also apply to the real world? Because like at the end, that's sort of the trick. It's this sort of poetic moment where the way you ultimately defeat Flowey is by, after he absorbs the souls, he can then feel emotion again, and then you can make him break down in his ultimate boss fight, and you can't beat him through violence, but he needed to absorb the souls first before you could get to him through emotion, which is this really satisfying kind of conclusion to the arc and all that. So, and saying that instead of that, just arbitrarily at that moment, we broke through his trauma, we got past that, and now we can feel emotion again. It's a much... it's much more of an ass pull narratively. It's a much weaker kind of structured moment for the Undertale narrative. Anyway.
It is well known that traumatic experiences occurring at a young age can cause sociopathic tendencies. And guess what? Not only did Flowey have the memories of Azrael, a murdered and traumatized child, he also had the determination extracted from several other murdered and traumatized children.
I don't like he's getting so like emotional about this. Like, I think if you have evidence, it just speaks for itself. He's really selling it like it's terrible, it's emotional, it's bad, it's trauma, it's like if you need to scream at me to make the point, then like maybe make a better point. I don't know. That's like a personal thing.
And that's not even discussing the trauma.
But what does it matter that the determination came from the murdered children? There's nothing to say that determination holds any like emotional memory or something. It's just like a substance as far as we know. You can put it into a syringe, so I don't see why that would have any effect.
Trauma that likely resulted from having the memories of Azrael while being stuck in the body of a flower.
Yeah, it's fucked up, but like I've given my stance on this already.
Flowey is a cocktail of pain, trauma, and misery harnessed from the corpses.
Is this all just to get back to the point why the Darkners can feel emotions without souls? Is this all just to do that? Like, I would have just accepted that they don't need souls in this new universe. I would just accept that. Like, they're a new type of being that we don't understand how they work. It's unclear whether they have souls. So why do you got to go through all this just to get to that point? Which I'm assuming that's where he's going with this.
No freaking wonder he struggled to feel love and empathy. Anybody would become a sociopath after experiencing something like that.
Oh my god, what a statement. Holy shit, man. Anybody would become a sociopath. You want to do a study? Do you want to let's get 500 children in a room and kill them and revive them from the dead as flowers and see if how many of them become sociopaths. What a good thing to like base a theory off of, and like a constructed narrative is just like someone might become a sociopath under these circumstances in real life based on psychology maybe, as opposed to like the existing plot contrivance that was generated for the story just specifically to explain the fact that Flowey suddenly does not feel emotions for seemingly supernatural reasons.
By contrast, the process that creates Darkners imbues them not only with life, but with a full personality, complete with love, hopes, and dreams. While dark fountains are strange and mysterious, it seems certain that they are not created using the essence of murdered children. And as a result,
Want to test that too? Let's test that. Let's murder some children and shovel them into dark fountains.
Darkners are not sociopaths.
Can I think of an example? Jevil probably. Spamton's definitely a fucking sociopath.
That's why Rousey...
Yeah, explain Spamton. We need to learn for why Spamton is such a fucking Sigma male.
...is a sweetheart, while Flowey was a nightmare.
Okay, this is just this is a bit of a mess. Like this is a problem that he created in the video, was why if we have the exact same logic applying to Darkners as to Floweys, why in that case between these two games that we don't even know how closely related they are, or like in terms of being in the same universe or whatnot, because of this, we now need to justify this point of why can Rousey feel emotion, whereas before with any other interpretation, we didn't have that problem. Creating a problem like this and then needing to solve it is a big hole in the theory. Even if you can figure out some explanation involving trauma, I don't like the explanation anyway. Even if it was a good explanation, this wouldn't be a good approach. I think if you have a theory that creates holes that then need to be backfilled, it's just a sign that you're not on the right track.
The process that created them was drastically...
Yeah, Chad is saying Jaru Extended Universe has DR being in Undertale's timeline. Yeah, that's where this is stemming from, ultimately. That maybe this is just ultimately a symptom of the Jaru-verse here. So saying that Deltarune has to be in the same timeline as Undertale creates so many festering inconsistencies that you're going to have to be playing whack-a-mole with those for the rest of your theory crafting life if you actually want to maintain that. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is this is just one more crack that now has to be filled with caulking because of this assumption way back there where it has to be in the same universe and has to have all the same rules carry over. So when you run into contradictions like this, you have to have like external weird logic to justify it, instead of just saying, oh yeah, they're Darkners, they're not the same, so they don't necessarily need to have souls. Why would they need to have souls? We don't even know if that's how it works. Anyway.
Different. Now, I could end the video right there, but you know...
What's gonna... Wait a minute. You say that, and then there's another half of the video. That's nut. That's an extremely powerful move. What?
Full well, there's still more to discuss. There's an issue with this theory of mine, an issue that you've likely already noticed. Ralsei isn't just any dead monster. He was created using a very specific monster's dust. Just like Flowey, he was created using the remains of Azrael Dreamer.
Here it is. I mean, I knew this was coming. Like, Azrael has to die in order for Jaru Ralsei here to exist. I guess, like, within the logic that we've contrived here, this would be the only way to make a would it be? It's the only reasonable way. Like, if Ralsei has to be a dead monster, we've just assumed that Ralsei has to be a dead monster. That means it's not the headband, it's not the Ralsei drawing. It has to be like Azrael's corpse. Like, I guess that's what you get. Yeah.
The issue I can hear you saying is that Azrael is not dead. He's away at college. Everyone says so.
Yeah.
This, my dear viewer, is where I blow your mind for a second time.
Please.
Have you ever wondered how people keep up to date regarding Azrael? How they know that he's away at college? How they know he's coming home soon? It's simple. They ask Chris.
Burger Pants does. I mean, Pizza Pants, sorry. I didn't mean to miss fast food, Mr. Pants there, but and maybe the characters you talk to in Hometown. I feel like this is if this somehow explains how Toriel and Asgore have not realized that Azrael has been dead for the last 3 months, I will be extremely impressed, to say the least.
Chris is specifically well known for talking to Azrael on a regular basis.
I wonder
but
why.
Wait, how does Chris talk to Azrael? Do they use their phone? Well, no.
Alfie
Azrael
says the
is
internet.
not a contact Chris has in their phone menu. Furthermore, if it was possible to use a phone to contact Azrael, then Burger Pants, someone who clearly has a phone, would not need to ask Chris.
A good point. Why the fuck doesn't what did he say, Burger Pants?
Burger Pants, so possible to use a phone to contact Azrael, then Burger Pants.
You absolute moron. Theory ruined, destroyed. It's Pizza Pants now. Burger Pants has become Pizza Pants in the new timeline somehow. Sorry. It's legitimately weird though, now that I think about it. Like, he has a point. Why the fuck can't Pizza Pants just call Azrael or something? Or, you know, hit him up on Facebook Messenger. It's kind of unclear what era this game is. Like, it seems to be a little bit retro based on, like, the computers. But, like, surely they have, like, texting. They all have phones, but maybe they don't have texting? I don't know. But why wouldn't... Yeah, okay, I don't want to think about this too hard. Let's just continue.
Someone who clearly has a phone would not need to ask Chris to tell Azrael about his new girlfriend. No, instead, Chris communicates with Azrael by using their computer. That's why Alphys says that the internet being down is preventing Chris from talking to their brother. Chris keeps in touch with Azrael by using the internet. Of course, this raises the question, why doesn't Azrael have a phone? We know Toriel happily gives her kids phones so that way she can check up on them.
We don't know that doesn't mean that Azrael has a phone. Okay, if that Burger Pants dialogue is the only thing that's going to be carrying this for the next, like, half hour potentially, I'll be very upset. Like, that's one vaguely inconsistent piece of dialogue there is, yeah, why can't Pizza Pants, Burger Pants just call Azrael, assuming Azrael hasn't fucking blocked him or something really mundane like that. That's just one piece of dialogue, though. Even if we can't explain it, I'm not prepared to, that foothold's gonna crumble if you put too much weight on it, basically. and saying that, using just that to say that Asriel doesn't have a phone at all, cannot have a phone, is very strange. But even then, okay, I'm gonna let him continue here, but
them. She even did this in Undertale, so it seems certain that she would have given her firstborn child a phone as well. So, why can't anybody use their phone to contact Asriel? The answer, or at least the answer that Chris has told everyone else, is that Asriel's phone is broken. As a result, nobody can call Asriel to check up on him, and thus
does no one else have the internet? Does no one else have the internet? I mean, the internet's down now, but like before it was down, back when Chris could talk to Asriel on the internet, why couldn't everyone else also talk to Asriel on the internet? Do I need to say anything more?
everybody has to rely on Chris for status updates. Chris is the only member of the Dreamer household that we know is the owner of a computer.
Really? That's the... We haven't even been in Toriel's bedroom. She could have a fucking battle station in there. She could be running an RTX 3090. We'd never know.
Toriel uses one at work, but we have no evidence.
Oh yeah, the work computer. There's also a public computer lab. That's what all the boomers come in to use the computer lab if they don't have their own. I used to work at a library, actually. That was a large portion of the people using the computers. Grandma has to go check her email.
Evidence that she knows how to use email. Older people often have a hard time using modern technology, especially if that older person is a boss monster.
All right, this is getting fantastic. All right, so the argument being made, he's recognized that he has to justify why no one else can contact Asriel via the computer. He hasn't gotten into why Pizza Pants can't, or why anyone else can't, that he's already used as evidence, because they have no other way of contacting Asriel except through Chris. Like, in order to make that point in the first place, you'd have to explain why they can't contact Asriel through the internet, as well as by phone. But he's going for the parents, because those are the most important ones. Why haven't... basically, the argument being made here is that for all the God knows how long Asriel's been at college, right? A college term... if it's just one term, we're looking at 3 months. If it's like a full 2 terms and then ending in the summer, it would be 6 months. It doesn't really matter. Like 3 months is plenty long enough. We have to argue that Toriel and Asgore, both, each, have not contacted Asriel a single time, or tried to contact Asriel once. We also have to argue that Asriel... actually, I don't know how he's going to set up this crime scene, this kind of murder mystery, how it's actually going to play out, whether or not Asriel actually ever made it to college and then, like, was killed somehow. But if Asriel got to college, we'd have to assume that he doesn't know a single person there. He doesn't have any personal relationships with anyone on the campus who would be able to notice that he's gone missing and maybe follow up on that. We also have to sort of tolerate the idea that somehow Toriel, who's the most overbearing protective mother in the history of the world, and Asgore, who is divorced to fucking back and probably calls Asriel 3 times a day just to alleviate the crushing loneliness in his heart, have not seen fit or found a way or made any or just somehow managed to get in touch with Asriel for a minimum 3 months. That's what we're dealing with here. This is the argument that is being made, and let's let that continue.
Monster who has lived for thousands of years.
Oh yeah, the Jaruverse. Toriel has to be 1,000 years old because it's an alternate timeline.
As such, the only person that is capable of contacting Asriel via the internet is Chris. Or at least, that's what Chris wants everyone to think. The truth is that Chris was never in contact with their brother.
Is that the end of the argument? Is that the end of, like, yeah, why don't Toriel and Asgore? If that's the end of the argument, it's just bullshit. That is not nearly enough evidence. You have not even come close to justifying that line of reasoning. Like, that's... yeah, basically on record. I'm going to keep watching the video. But if there's not, like, a boatload of more evidence on that specific point, why can't Toriel, Asgore, all the other citizens of hometown who might know Azrael contact him. Why haven't they been contacting him? Why have they been okay with not contacting him? Unless that's justified, it's garbage. Everything past this point is absolutely garbage. Sorry, but like that is just not a valid line of reasoning unless you can justify that more. Like, it's just fucked up to think. Like, no one would check on Azrael. He's like a popular kid. Everyone seems to like Azrael. His parents are both really into like, you know, like Asgore seems like the kind of person who would just drive the fuck over to where Azrael is himself if there was no other way to contact him and demand to like hang out or go to dinner, you know. It's an absurd claim. I'll go as far as to say that.
Chris has not been staying up late talking to Azrael every night. That was a lie they told to cover up the truth. The truth is that Azrael never left to go to college.
He never left. Okay, I wanted that clarified.
The truth is that Azrael will never go anywhere ever again.
Because he's dead. I wonder how this is going to work. So Azrael never got to college. Does that imply... Did they send the tuition in already? Like, usually they email you about tuition if you haven't, like, paid it within, like, the first couple of weeks of class. So if Azrael wasn't even in the classes, would the university have tried to correspond, maybe? And sorry, this is where my mind goes. I was recently a university student, so the stuff has to get taken care of, you know?
The truth is that Azrael, just like in Undertale, is dead. Here is how the story played out. Several months ago, right before Azrael was about to head off to college, Chris, late at night, went up to the school. Why did they go up there? Well, Chris had seen this really cool video.
Oh, hell yeah, we're getting into the fucking... I heard about this actually. This was spoiled for me, that like every object in the search results room has to come back and have like massive plot relevance. So this is the start of that, where this is like perfect murder weapon. You want your Jello knife, right? Because it'll melt. No evidence at all. Yeah, that Japanese guy, he makes knives out of like smoke and chocolate. Someone's got to take that channel down. It's a public nuisance. People are going to be stabbing their brothers to death left and right.
Where a man created a super sharp knife out of...
Oh shit, chat says if Chris somehow killed Azrael, it couldn't have been direct, as their experience and love is still at a minimum. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so elegant, because if we're in the Jaruverse, all the mechanics are exactly the same. So there's no way of getting around it by saying that love and experience don't work the same way anymore. Yeah, is Azrael not worth enough XP to level up? A single Whimsun, by the way, I think isn't enough XP to level up. So theoretically, if Azrael is worth as little XP as a Whimsun, then it would have been possible to commit the murder without your love. Right? You think that's something they test on in murder cases in this universe, where they have like the detector they put you into and read your stats menu, and if your love is more than one, then they arrest you. My God, what a fantastic point.
Jello, and that gave Chris a great idea for a prank. They would dress up like a monster using their favorite plastic devil horns and a green robe, and would hide in the closet.
I was not expecting like an actual like definitive play-by-play. I was sure this is just going to be somehow, for some reason, at some point, Frisk shanked Azrael and then hid the body or something. But this is going full on into like, this is like the ending of a Phoenix Wright trial, when you've got the suspect cornered and you have to lay out the entire series of events, or like I'm thinking of Danganronpa maybe, but we're going here. Except there's no evidence for any of this, but we're still doing it.
At the school, Chris would then jump out and startle someone with their knife, much like how they jump-scared Noelle in the past.
Pro tip though, in real life, that is a good way to get expelled. Don't do that.
Asriel noticed his younger sibling sneaking off, and since he was a responsible older brother who did his best to make up for Chris's bad behavior, he followed Chris to
I'm willing to actually forgive almost everything here, because while there's no evidence for it, it also doesn't matter at all whether or not it's true. This is just a sort of a superfluous, specific case play-by-play here.
to make sure they didn't cause any trouble. And so, sneaking into the building, Asriel discovers Chris inside of the closet at the north end of the school. Asriel barges in, intending to interrupt whatever prank Chris was performing, only for something terrible
Okay, no.
to happen. Chris, startled by the sudden appearance of their brother, trips and falls, and it
Okay, I said I wouldn't criticize the scenario. The scenario sucks ass. I'll say that much. It doesn't need to be the scenario, though. Hypothetically, in a world where this is actually the true plot of the game, Chris could have killed Asriel in any way, and this doesn't need to matter. I just wish there wasn't so much time spent in this completely kind of redundant play-by-play here.
in doing so, accidentally stabs their beloved older sibling. Asriel, grievously wounded by Chris's knife, dies in Chris's arms, with his dust scattering across the costume Chris was wearing. Chris, horrified at what they had done.
Oh no, we do need the play-by-play, because he's going to use the dust on the costume to justify why was Chris in a fucking costume? Where did it come from? When did they get changed? Why was it that costume? Why are they doing this? Sorry.
Abandons their dust-covered costume in that closet and runs back home, desperately trying to think of a way to undo their mistake. The next morning, Chris, trying
Chris fell on Asriel with the jello knife has the energy of how the circus case in Phoenix Wright 2 ends. I've only played the first game, but like the fact that any of this can be compared to Phoenix Wright is it's not great. That was actually one of Dork's videos I watched. That was one of my main complaints, was I compared a series of events she laid out to a quote-unquote Phoenix Wright case. So usually when your Deltarune theory is getting compared to Phoenix Wright, it's not a good sign. The rest of the Dork video, it wasn't bad though. It was just that the scenario itself was kind of janky, but not to get sidetracked.
to buy for time lies and says that Asriel left for college and that Asriel's phone was broken. As a result, if the family wants status updates about Asriel, they'll have to get them from Chris. Chris is panicking and is desperately searching for a solution to their dilemma. They needed to resurrect their brother from...
This was like before Asriel left for college, though. This is a point I want to harp on, right? Because if we're treating this like a Phoenix Wright case, when was the moment when Asriel was supposed to leave for college? Like, if Asriel was still at school when Frisk shanked him to death in the closet, why, like, he would have had to have been leaving at a later point, which involves getting into, either taking a car and driving there, getting into a bus, getting onto an airplane, or his family driving him there. All of these are rather conspicuous exits. His family would be there to say goodbye if he was leaving for college. So how does that work? How does that work if Asriel's dead and yet his family thinks that he has left for college?
The dead. How could that even be possible? Under normal circumstances, it wasn't. But that's when the thought hit them. If normal methods could not bring Asriel back, then maybe magic could. Maybe magic...
Chat says, I don't think Toria would let Asriel go to college with only Chris informing her. How do you think he's getting to college, though? I mean, why is Chris even Why is it even possible that Chris is the sole arbiter of this information? Azrael would have to physically get up in the morning, walk out the door, and then get on a bus or something. If he's not being driven by his family, even. That, like, at very least, Azrael would have to have come home that day after school. This scenario was laid out as if they were both at school. Azrael wasn't proceeding directly out the door of his high school into a car and going to college. There would have been, I mean, discounting the fact that there would have been at least like a couple of weeks between the end of the school term and the beginning of the, university. Even if Azrael was leaving on the same day, even if Azrael was planning on walking out of his high school graduation and into a bus on the side of the road and going to college without packing, without doing anything, like his family would have wanted to say goodbye at least.
Could bring their brother back to life. And so, in the following weeks, Chris stays up late every night searching the internet for information on...
There's no reason they'd be staying up late searching the internet for any other reason. No one does that.
Magic. People notice that Chris is staying up super late, as Chris frequently falls asleep during class at school.
Bro, I've been going to bed at 3 to 4 a.m. lately. I don't have any dead siblings. What's my excuse?
But they cover this up by claiming they're staying up late talking to Azrael. Chris even consults Caddy, as she claimed to have learned spells from studying the occult. However, none of this works.
Oh my god,
Despite their best
he even
efforts,
found a way to get the Caddy occult stuff in here and plot relevant. Even that. It can't just be one thing, one explanation, one response. It's like every possible plot point has to tie into this somehow. Otherwise, it's not valid or something. I don't know. This is a case of like treating the game as... This is like the ultimate long shot. It's like, if I make everything in the game part of this one theory, and if it's right, everything will click into place at once. It'll solve the whole game. The trade-off with that is the more pieces of, the more connections you have to other pieces of the plot, the more just unlikely it is, like, that all of those different things are pointing unilaterally toward this one crazy twist.
It seems like Chris's brother is well and truly gone. So imagine...
What is Chris Googling, by the way? Is he looking for, like, how to bring monster back from the dead? Best way, sibling revival, easy, from, like, 5-minute crafts or something? Like, they're not looking up how to hide the body, because, apparently the monsters turn into dust. What is Chris trying to find out so hard on the internet?
Imagine Chris's shock when one day, upon going to that dreadful closet, Chris stumbles into a whole other world. And in that world, they discover a person that looks shockingly similar to their dead brother. How could this be? Chris is completely unnerved by this entity, and so, even though Ralsei is extremely friendly, Chris remains deeply suspicious of him.
I mean, unnerved, is that coming from the T-lore? Most of what we know about why, like, Chris's disposition toward Ralsei is, like, comes from how much HP the Ralsei T heals them, which is 60, which is still more than, like, neutral. For characters who haven't met, I think it's 50. So it's not like Chris just looks at Ralsei and feels existential dread. I'm trying to think of a way to make a reference that's spoiling. I can't do it. Never mind.
Them. And as a result, Chris receives less healing from Ralsei T than...
Less... I don't know if this is worth, like, after everything that we've been through, is this the point that I actually want to pick on? No, it's not.
They do from their other friends. But more importantly, the more Chris learns about this dark world where magic runs rampant and inanimate objects are brought to life, they start to get hopeful. They smile for the first time in a long
Okay, this was spoiled for me too. Let's just let this play out.
time and celebrate this discovery by eating an entire pie.
Oh, hell yeah, your dead siblings coming back to life. We eating good tonight. We're taking out our knives at midnight. We're doing Jeff the Killer smiles at the camera there's a camera. Take out the soul inside your body for some reason. That's a plot point too, apparently, is that you have that doesn't seem to be relevant anymore, that there's a soul inside Chris's body that's controlling their actions. Yeah, just rip out the soul controlling your actions after killing your brother who's now alive in the dark closet and go eat some pie. It's too much. It's too much.
For they have begun to realize that maybe, just maybe, there might be a way to revive Azrael.
Is that the face you make if you discover there's a way to bring back your dead brother that you killed? Do your eyes turn red and you hunch over and you go smile like Germa doing the sus face? That's not really a face of happiness to me. That's a face of like, that's an expression of being utterly demented. That's just how Chris smiles, chat says. Fair enough. This isn't the battle I want to fight here necessarily, is that this isn't the right facial expression to make when your brother comes back from the dead and you get to eat pie. I don't know what facial expression that is. I've never seen it. I've never had to make it. So maybe, yeah, who knows? Okay.
Israel after all. As a result, Chris is more than happy to go back to the castle town.
It's an
and
expression
later
of pain,
to the cyber world. For this magical dark world holds their best shot at saving their brother. And once they learn that it's possible to create more dark fountains, Chris knows precisely what to do. They create their own dark fountain right inside their house.
So somehow this is explaining like everything. Everything is tied into this. This explains like the post-Snowgrave dark fountain thing that I couldn't explain in my last video. It's that I didn't expect that. It's like when you're working on some like distantly related topic in math and suddenly it proves a conjecture from another discipline. That's what we have here. We have like somehow the Chris stabbing Rousey theory has explained the Snowgrave fountain conundrum.
Something that you guys brought up in the comments and which was a major point in a video by Andrew.
Hey, who's that? Who's that guy? Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Drew Cunningham, is that it doesn't make sense for Chris to make this dark fountain if you partake in the Snowgrave.
It's nice to know that people are taking ideas from my videos and spamming them in the comments of other people's videos, like what's happening to me with the Flowey lore from one of Dory's videos earlier. It's just an infinite cycle of having other people's opinions vomited at you through the mouths of 1,000 YouTube commenters. It's great.
Brave route. After all, if Chris saw such horrible things happen to Noelle and Birdley, wouldn't they avoid creating a dark fountain? Wouldn't they want to avoid risking the lives of more people? It seems irrational for Chris to do this. However, once you take into account the death of Azrael...
That sure is one way of explaining it. It sure is one way of explaining that. That's what I'll say.
This scene starts to make a lot more sense. Chris, as horrified...
Yes, this this disproves the third entity, says. Yeah, absolutely. It's all worth it. We've disproved the third entity. All we had to do is have Chris murder Azrael with the Jello knife.
As they may have been by what happened to Noelle and Birdley, would still insist on creating a dark fountain, as this is the only chance they have to revive Azrael from the dead. Furthermore, Chris is running out of time, because someone, probably Toriel, asked Chris when Azrael was coming home for summer vacation.
For the fuck? Obviously, Toriel knows that. University, it'll have a website. It'll have like the end of term date listed. Uh, this stuff. She's probably already planning like their, the reading break vacations or whatever. It's not just a thing that you can set it and forget it. Oh, my kid's at college. I guess they're in the hyperbolic time chamber until 3 months from now when I can think or speak to them again. It's like they still exist. You still have to consider their schedule and stuff.
Chris had no idea, so they looked it up on the internet and told their family when Azriel should be coming back.
Like the idea that they would have to make Chris do that. Chris doesn't fucking know. All Chris is going to do is go to the computer in the house and Google it. Why can't you do that, Toriel, you dumb bitch? Why doesn't Toriel know how to use a computer? She is a school teacher. You can Google that. If all you have to type is summer vacation college when into any search browser, without knowing the name of the college. Basically, what I read this text block as is the fact that Chris is asking such a general question, instead of like going to the university's like website or something and actually like it shows a level of like kind of naivete or vulnerability that I thought was kind of endearing. This is like a character building box. Is like Chris doesn't really understand how the post-secondary education system works. He just wants to know when Azriel's coming home. I thought it was kind of cute. I don't think it works as a cog in this sort of elaborate murder plot.
But because Chris told them this, their family and the rest of the town is expecting Azriel to come home.
This concept that Chris is like the town crier. He's like, hey, Azriel will be coming henceforth 7 days. It's bizarre. It's truly bizarre that like everyone is just like siphoning Azriel news. This Chris is like the living avatar. He's the oracle of Azriel Dreamer, through which he speaks to the mortal realm of hometown.
Home in a couple days. So Chris only has until then to bring their brother back to life. As such, even if they were terrified by the Snowgrave route, they really don't have any other option.
I mean, this is actually superfluous. I mean, regardless of how it is generally known when Azriel's coming back, like even fucking Sans knows when Azriel's coming back, doesn't he? He's like, maybe in a week when your brother comes home, you can see Papyrus. If even Sans knows this, maybe it's just common knowledge, and Chris also knows it for the same reason as everyone else. And they're just feeling this pressure because, yeah, Azriel is supposed to come home. I got to get my brother replacement in place before that happens. Otherwise, everyone who has somehow been kept in the dark for the last 3 months about this will now realize that I've killed Azriel. Not even that Azriel's missing, not even that there's a mystery. Somehow this will come back to Chris. I don't see how that would even get traced back to Chris in the first place, or why Chris is even worried about covering this up. But yeah, so there's layers and layers and layers of problems here. It's this sort of like surreal state where does anything even matter anymore? Like, I'm arguing against these points, but I said like several minutes ago that if this one thing wasn't addressed, then the rest of the video was meaningless, and it sure as hell wasn't. So yeah, let's keep going.
Except to create more dark fountains if they want to undo their mistake and save their brother. To be clear, I know that I am filling in a lot of gaps in order to justify my theory, and that my evidence is limited.
What do you say after that? What's the but?
But you cannot deny that my theory answers so many questions.
It answers questions. The cost is that you've left the rest of the framework of the logic of this game in smoldering ruins behind you. You have flooded the river, you have destroyed the city, and now you can claim victory over the siege. This is madness. This is a path of madness.
My theory tells us why Ralsei looks and acts like Azriel, why Chris has been studying magic, why Chris sleeps through class, why Chris stays up late on the internet.
Those didn't need to be explained. Okay, just this point. Why does Chris sleep in class? Because they stay up late on the internet. Okay, second point explains the first. Why does Chris stay up late? Because teenagers do that sometimes. Never needed explaining. This should not be being used as evidence here. This isn't evidence anyway. This is things that would make sense if this were true, which is a bit... It's kind of in a gray area in terms of evidence. I think it's hard to discuss maybe, but in particular, this one point, it shouldn't be being considered.
Sleeps through class. Why Chris stays up late on the internet. Why Chris looked up when the college summer vacation.
Again, that doesn't need to be answered in any other interpretation of events here. Chris would just want to know that.
Is. Why Chris looked up kitchen knife jello.
Again, doesn't need to be answered. There's already an explanation for that. Chris just likes knives, maybe. It's characterization.
Why Azriel is completely absent from the story.
Because he's at college. Doesn't need to be answered. Again.
Why Burger Pants needs to ask Chris to communicate with Azriel.
One valid point. Was that the only valid point? Let me go back.
My theory and why Ralph so many questions. My theory tells us why Ralph looks and acts like Azriel.
Yeah, that could be explained by the horn headband or the Ralsei picture.
Why Chris has been studying magic.
Because, I mean, fair enough, but that could also just be another point of characterization. Everything in this room by default works as character building. This lets us see into the characters' sort of personal lives. How, like, you know, Susie plays the skateboard games and stuff, and Chris, the bath bombs tie into the Chris being a prankster and putting bath bombs in the toilet. Everything else is character building, so some of them... you don't need to explain any of these. That's not required.
Why Chris sleeps through class. Why Chris stays up late on the internet. Why Chris looked up when the college summer vacation is. Why Chris looked up kitchen knife jello. Why Azriel is completely absent from the story. Why Burger Pants needs to ask Chris to communicate with Azriel on his behalf. Why Ralsei has so many similarities to Flowey. Why Azriel isn't in our phone contacts.
Why wouldn't Azriel be in Chris's phone? If Azriel having a broken phone was a story made up by Chris to hide the murder, and in reality Azriel doesn't answer because he's dead, why would Chris not have his phone number? Chris should be able to call his number, but no one picks up. That doesn't explain shit.
Why Ralsei has Chris's plastic devil horns.
Because that's just the horn headband theory. Again, that's already an explanation. You don't need to explain the explanation.
Why Toby Fox bothered telling us about Chris playing pranks.
It's called character building.
With bath bombs and jump scares, why Ralsei has such mysterious powers, and why Chris would create a dark fountain after the events of the Snowgrave route.
Honestly, after all of this, he just listed like 15 things. That was just an onslaught of things that this theory supposedly solves, which is sort of being implied to be evidence for it. Which, again, I don't know exactly how to feel about that. Is it the same thing as evidence? If, like, assuming this is true, then this would make sense. Is that the same thing as evidence for it? Like, what I'm looking for mostly with evidence is, like, if this was not true, then nothing would make sense. It has to be, like, there's no other explanation, really, for like, the good stuff anyway, but maybe that's incoherent. Like, the only good points here are like Pizza Pants not being able to contact Azriel. Legitimate point. Fine. Yeah, why? Why is that the case? I don't know. Ralsei having the powers. This is from way earlier in the video. It would explain that, but there are other ways to explain it. Honestly, out of all of this, out of all like the 15 things that he just went through, I think the only one of them that has no alternative explanation that seems more reasonable to me is Pizza Pants not being able to call Azriel. That is it. That's the only point.
My theory could totally be wrong, but please tell me about a single other theory that can answer so many questions and connect so many pieces of
No, that's not a good thing. That's not the goal. You've lowered your standard for evidence so low that you can create this monstrosity that makes everything make sense in chapter 2. We shouldn't be able to do that. We're not supposed to have all the answers in chapter 2. The fact that you've created such this, it speaks for itself. You've had to go so far on a limb of conjecture and into this crackpot theory to force everything to make sense at this early point in the story when we're missing all of these potential reveals that could just very naturally explain these things, like why Rousey has powers, how the Grand Fountain works and stuff. And has created this monstrosity. This is an absolute mess.
Of evidence all in one go. But wait, there's more. At the start
Oh,
of
there is.
this
Fuck, I thought it was actually ending.
video, I promised to give you 3 insane revelations, and I've only given you 2 thus far. I've revealed the true nature of Rousey and how he came to be, and then I revealed the tragic fate of Azrael, which is likely going to be the core source of drama in this game. But there's still...
Which is likely going to be the core source of drama. Dripping with hubris. Just to call the central conflict. It's nothing to do with the meta text. It's nothing to do with Undertale. Nothing to do with the Red Soul. Nothing to do with the other characters' relationship problems. It's this thing that hasn't really been hinted at in any way. That's like this plot twist, a future plot twist, and it's all going to center back to that. Yikes. I don't know what the motivation for theories like this is. Like, even if you're just going to write fan fiction, like, at least make a fan fiction that's like more satisfying than what we have already.
One more insane revelation for me to blow your minds with. And this revelation might just be the most shocking of them all, as I am going to give you an answer to the greatest mystery in Deltarune. The mystery that has been confounding us ever since Chapter 1 was released.
Why is Birdley in the game?
I am going to give an answer to a question that you have all been asking. And that question is this. Who is possessing Chris?
Oh my god, it comes back. It explains everything. Nothing is spared. Nothing escapes. Holy shit. Let's just go.
If I had asked this question at any other time, almost everyone in the community would have given the exact same answer.
You're damn fucking right. I'd go so far as to say even at this time, even in this current moment, I would still give that answer.
The player is possessing Chris. Obviously. After all,
that would make sense and be satisfying and be interesting and have potential for narrative development and meta commentary that would tie into Undertale and Toby Fox's previous corpus of work.
We are the player, and we are controlling Chris. So surely the player is the one possessing Chris, right?
Yeah, if you say it in baby voice, it sounds stupid.
No. This answer, that the player is the one possessing Chris, has never sat well with me.
Oh boy. Sorry, I haven't been feeling emotions throughout most of this video. It's been a sort of detached experience, but this new turn is actually like started to spike my adrenaline a bit. It's like, it's making me angry. I didn't expect that to happen. Fuck, I wish it just ended with the 57. That could have been like a funny... It was enough. It was plenty as it was.
Why? Because the player easily controlled Frisk in Undertale. Frisk, the most powerful wielder of determination in this franchise, was completely helpless against the player's control.
This is the crack created by the Jaruverse. It's actually retroactive, which I never considered before. It's, if you want Deltarune and Undertale to be in the same universe, In addition to justifying why everything in Deltarune is different from Undertale, you have to justify why things in Undertale are different from Deltarune. Why? Because, the player character in Deltarune is being controlled by this soul. Why? Surely that must be the case for Frisk now. Which is... It's like blasphemy. It's like going back and like undermining Undertale with a Deltarune theory. It shouldn't be able to do that. It's too much power. You should leave Undertale alone at the very least, please.
Not once did Frisk have the opportunity.
There's not even any reason to suggest that determination would give you the ability to remove the soul. It's never implied that the reason Chris can remove the soul or resist the soul is determination. That's just the generic use of the word with the English language, like willpower. We're just assuming that makes sense. But no, there's nothing in the story that even links the two concepts together. There never was. Why is it being brought up now, as if that matters?
Opportunity to defy our command. So, tell me, dear viewers, how is Chris able to rebel against us?
Because it's a different game?
How is Chris able to do something that even the most powerful human in the franchise was incapable of doing?
Because they're a teenager, says chat. Because Frisk was an 8-year-old and Chris is older. Holy shit. I don't know what to think anymore. What do I say about this? The fundamental, like the bedrock this is built upon is fractured. I don't know what to say about like this particular point. It's like we're working with a set of assumptions so fundamentally detached from everything I've ever known about Undertale and Deltarune. I can't make sense of it anymore.
The answer? Chris has never rebelled against the player. Rebelling against the player is impossible. The reason...
Okay, what about the time in the cutscene in the genocide route of Undertale where you take several steps forward through Papyrus's puzzle, or that one time when ostensibly Kara takes the final attack? Maybe that's not rebellion. I'm trying to use this like the existing moon logic in reference to Undertale. I don't like it. It feels wrong. But even then, even if you wanted to follow this road to the very end, I feel like there would still be contradictions. They still have work to do to make this all make sense. But like, Chris has the same level of like implicit autonomy as Frisk did. It seems like they can still move in cutscenes. They still have like control over like the way their dialogue is expressed. I don't even know. I'm fighting against like an illusory opponent here. I don't even know what point's being made. I should just play the video. Stop talking, Andrew. Stop talking.
Chris is able to rebel is because we have never been controlling them in the first place. Chris is not the protagonist of this story.
I'm fascinated. I actually don't know what's coming. I don't know what the answer is here. Like, what is he implying? Is he going to say, is like Frisk or Kara? Like, Kara's the one, like, the closest to making sense, I guess. I guess I want to find out.
Chris is not the character we are playing as. Toby Fox has tricked us. This entire time we have actually been playing not as Chris, but as the character hiding in Chris's soul. And who is controlling?
Oh, it's Asriel. It's Asriel. It's Dreamer Reborn again, everybody. We did Dreamer Reborn. We have it. It's finally canon. Thank God. Okay, how does that work? It's Asriel's soul? Yeah, it could be Asriel. So it's like a Kingdom Hearts situation, right? Like, so a character dies, soul gets sucked into the nearest body, Chris. So Chris now has Asriel's soul, which is controlling Chris resolutely. It's not even a 50-50 split like it was in Undertale between Kara and Asriel. Apparently Asriel now has absolute control over Chris, which I don't even. That's Jaru's argument. That's not even mine. Like, Jaru was just saying that like rebelling against the player is impossible. Oh no, wait, no, that was different. No, in Undertale it was the player. In this case, it's Asriel. So rebelling against Asriel is possible because it's Asriel, not the player. There is no player. We're controlling Asriel with an unbreakable player protagonist kind of covalent bond, and then Asriel is controlling Chris with sort of an imperfect sort of character to character ionic bond, and that allows for the rebellion. Holy shit! I think I actually understood the logic we're working with here.
Calling Chris from inside their own soul? You already know the answer, my dear viewers. Even if you had never watched this video, you would still know the answer.
What?
Because Undertale spoiled the answer a decade ago. A human can't.
Was that like the video was going to be in production for between 1 more week and 3 years? So we just said a decade to be safe.
Cannot absorb a human soul.
I mean, yeah, it's true.
A human cannot absorb a regular monster soul either.
I mean, well, it's like they could, but they break too quickly. So
because regular monster souls disappear instantly.
Why does Chris need to have absorbed a soul? Is this okay? So it's like the player. The I'm just calling it the player's soul. That's all I know how to call it. The red soul inside Chris. They're saying it counts as an absorbed soul. It's not Chris's soul. It was an absorbed soul. We've chosen a branch on the Super Soul Searching Christmas tree diagram, and because is it like if it was the player's soul, the player counts as a human? Is that the same logic? Surely that can't be the logic. Like a human soul from a real human from another like instance of reality that has no relation to your own counts as a human soul for the purposes of this one sign in the True Labs that says that Chris can't absorb it in the other game, in Undertale too. So therefore it can't be the player, but it can be Asriel. But why can we control Asriel? This just kicks the can further down the road here. It's like if we've removed the player from the equation, but we still have this sort of player protagonist thing between Chris and Asriel. So is the player being deconstructed at all here? Is that even part of the game in the slightest under this interpretation, where you have this deconstruction of like what it means to have, like for the player to control the protagonist? Is that just completely gone? Was that never important?
Upon the monster's death. The only kind of soul that a human can...
Yeah, chat, like, it's Asriel controlling Chris, but we're still controlling Asriel. Like, there's still, like, a player-protagonist dynamic here. But there's just another layer to it. I don't understand how the player would fit in, thematically or otherwise, to this scenario.
And absorb is a boss monster soul.
I don't know why I paused it there. It was like a reflex, sorry.
Because boss monster souls can endure just long enough to be absorbed. And guess what?
He's actually doing, I just realized this, he's doing the game theory voice. And guess what? This is a game theory. It was like a gradient. It was like boiling the frog. I didn't even notice until it was too late.
There are only 3 confirmed boss monsters in this franchise. It can't be Toriel.
She's alive.
She's still alive. It can't be Asgore.
For the same reason.
He's still alive. There's only one possible boss monster.
Okay, this is again what we it's just implicit at this point that Chris has to have absorbed a monster soul. Why was that true? Was that ever actually articulated? Why this is now such an important thing that we can use it to leverage these other crazy ideas that Chris must have some monster soul, so therefore it has to be a boss monster soul, so therefore it has to be Asriel's soul. When was that actually a part of this, that Chris has to have a monster soul?
That Chris could have absorbed. One boss monster who has yet to make an appearance in Deltarune. Chris is being controlled and possessed by the soul of the brother that they killed. The brother who they held in their arms as he died. The brother whose dust went on to create Ralsei. The main character of Deltarune, the one who Chris is rebelling against in these scenes, and the one who we, the player, are actually controlling, is none other than Asriel.
Yeah, we got there. All right, holy shit. That felt like the ending of the Beethoven's Ninth or something. Just 1 5 1 5 da 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 da. The point is this. Jesus. I'm sorry. That's aside from the theory, but I'm just sort of agitated at this point. The screaming. It's the screaming.
We should have seen this coming. The answer is so obvious now that I see it. Toby Fox, that sly dog, is telling the exact same story again.
What a fucking good idea. What a great idea, Toby. You made the world's most successful indie game, and you have the follow-up. You can do anything you want. You've expressed dissatisfaction with the fan base. You said it was a terrifying experience, how popular Undertale became. You've been dealing with this for years and years and years. It's a great part of your life, but it's also a terrible part. You're probably sick of it at this point. You want to move on. So you have your next big chance to make your dream game that you had in the works before Undertale. And what's the best thing you can think of? The best idea you've got in your bag? The same thing again, just not even the same characters. No, it's the same story, it's the same themes, it's the same twist, it's the same concepts. All of that has to be the same. For some reason, no. That was like the. I don't know. This is the point that broke me, but like, why did you say that so happily? Like that was a good thing that made sense.
Is telling the exact same story again. Is telling the exact same story again. Is telling the exact same story again. In both games.
Great.
Toriel and Asgore had a human child and a monster child. In both games, one of their children tragically died only to be absorbed by their sibling. The one difference is that in Undertale, the human died and was absorbed by Asriel, whereas in Deltarune, Asriel died.
Hang on. Wait a minute. This is reminding me of something to an extent that I can't ignore. Wait a minute. This will be janky. I'm not too experienced with OBS, but will this work?
Okay, now hear me out. Hear me out now.
Well, it doesn't have the audio.
Gaster is actually bleak.
Or no, maybe it does, but I can't hear it.
From the Dark World universe, which probably means they
home stuff
involved too, which would make it a
comic theory.
You laugh. You laugh. But it could be a real thing. It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
Sorry. That's where my head's been at for the last little while. Oh boy. How do I get rid of this the video? Okay. Man, I didn't think it would get I didn't think it would get this bad. Really, like even though the Discord server was freaking out, it was freaking out and memeing really hard. I wasn't expecting this. Like, this is insane. It's gone so far. It's not even just like a disregard for like following all the evidence carefully and considering counter evidence and considering alternative explanations and doing your checks and balances. It's like, it's caustic to like the fundamental concepts and ideas and like a faith in Toby Fox as like a competent writer. It's like undermining things that I never thought it was even possible to undermine from the context of just a Deltarune fan theory. Like, Jesus, I haven't felt like this since Sans' Nest, and Sans' Nest probably wasn't remotely that bad, because I was, you know, standards change over time. Wow. I think Sans' this is beyond Sans' Nest, right? Like, hear me out. Like, Sans' Nest, it was stupid and conjectural and made no sense and didn't need to be a thing. But it was legitimately addressing things that didn't have explanations. It was trying to find an answer for why does Sans bleed? Why does Sans have the time machine, whatever that machine is? And most importantly, what I want to get at, it didn't break the rest of the game necessarily to be true. Even if it was stupid that Sans was an Earthbound character, it didn't like attack the themes and ideas behind the game and like reduce them to like a lesser state. And even, yeah, I found that theory back then offensive enough that I stopped watching MatPat until this very day. I just like, no, I'm done, right? But this is like, this has gotten much, much worse than that. I'm astounded. I really didn't think we would have taken this road. I'm just ranting at this point. I'm like actually speechless. Not speechless, obviously, because I won't shut up. You know what I mean, though. Like, I've lost the capacity for more coherent thought. Like, this started out like a very kind of productive, I was, you know, there's a point, I would respond to the point. And so maybe this, maybe that, maybe this other idea. I feel like the last half of this video has just been me ranting. And I kind of feel bad, but, like, this isn't how I pictured this going. It honestly isn't. I'm just going to keep playing the video. We got to finish it.
And was absorbed by the human. And best of all, do you remember what happened after Asriel absorbed their sibling's soul in Undertale? Asriel's will proved to be stronger than his siblings. And so Asriel ended up taking full control of their shared body. And guess what? In Deltarune, the exact same thing has happened again. After fusing together, Asriel's will proved to be stronger than their siblings, and thus Asriel has taken full control of their shared body. Asriel is the one controlling Chris. It never made sense that Chris was rebelling against the player.
I just got to keep playing it. I just got to keep letting the video play.
Because there is zero evidence that rebelling against the player is even possible.
Oh my god. Okay, no, I can't just not pause the video. Why the fuck is this a thing, man? Why? There's no evidence that it is possible. Why do we need evidence when we're seeing it happen? Okay, this is such a fucking weird. The logic on the video's behalf has become so convoluted and distributed between Undertale and Deltarune and all these unrelated bits of lore, like Chris as a protagonist versus Frisk as a protagonist, games that like I would argue for the sake of diplomacy, I'll just say, may have been dealing with very different subject matter, had very different goals. They're now being forced onto one another. Like, they have to be relevant. Frisk being a player character has to be relevant to Chris being a player character. Even though Deltarune has a very distinct preoccupation with this kind of commentary upon, like, wow, the player character is taking out your control. It's a thing. You are not the player. Have you noticed that you are not the player character? That's interesting. That's unique. It's like a commentary. Undertale wasn't making that commentary. It didn't have anything to say about that. It had other stuff to say about saving and loading and about your attachment to fictional characters, but that was the one thing it wasn't deconstructing yet. And now Deltarune, it is deconstructing that. And so that's like what I base a lot of the ideas whenever I say like, oh, determination might not be the same thing. The souls may not work in the same way. I think that's where like you benefit so much from just drawing a healthy distinction between these two games. That they might share similarities in a lot of respects, like aesthetically and to do with like minor aspects of the world building, but it doesn't make sense for them to both be tackling the same ideas, and they need to have differences in their mechanics and their structure and their logic in order to deconstruct different concepts. Because they're not doing the same thing. That would be so dumb. It would be pointless. Toby's devoting a decade of his life to this, and he's not going to repeat the same thing he did in Undertale. He's not going to make the same point twice. That would be such a waste. And this is all based on the assumption that that the themes are irrelevant almost. That like if this thing happened this way in Undertale, it absolutely has to be the same in Deltarune, even if Deltarune being different is necessary for Deltarune to explore this idea of the player-protagonist dynamic. Yet another rant. There you go.
But do you know what there is evidence for? Rebelling against the person who has absorbed your soul. Asriel did it to Kara, the human souls did it to Flowey, and now Chris is doing it to Asriel. My theory not only explains what Rouse is, it not only explains what's going on.
That was the goal, right? This video is called What is Rouse? And now we're an hour in, and we're explaining why Chris is being controlled by Asriel, who's dead.
With Asriel, but it also explains who is possessing Chris. It makes too much sense.
Play the fucking video. Play the fucking video. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Shit.
Okay, now hear me out. Hear me out now. What if Gaster is actually Queen? Because they're both
Darkness from the Dark World.
universe, which probably means they
Home stuff.
involved too, which would make it a
Comic theory.
You laugh. You laugh. But it could be a real thing. It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
There we go. You just quoted the MatPat video. You just quoted it. Oh.
Heck, even the fact that Chris is able to remove their soul at all could be explained by this theory. We know that a monster who absorbs a human soul gains unfathomable power.
But we don't know what happens if a human absorbs a monster soul. Therefore, it explains this. It doesn't explain if you don't know what happens. Why are you using it as evidence?
But we never got to find out what kind of powers a human would gain if they absorbed.
I read a really good fan fiction once where absorbing a monster soul as a human apparently lets you make a really big tree that smacks people. Maybe that's the case. Is that any more true than what he's saying? I think it was cooler when it let you make a really big tree. All right?
A boss monster's soul. But now we do. It seems almost certain that the reason Chris is able to remove their soul without dying is because they are no longer just a human. They are more than a human. They have the combined power of a boss monster and a human, which grants them the ability to survive
without a soul. So the source of the power of being more than a human is in the soul. So then you can take out the soul, and by removing the soul, you can only survive because you have the power of the soul, which you just removed. It makes so much sense, guys.
Just for a little while without their soul. Also, no wonder Chris is weirded out by Rouse. They know Rouse is
there the uncanny reincarnation of their dead brother. There's no other explanation, really. It couldn't just be that Chris has, you know, sort of complex feelings toward Asriel in general, being overshadowed by his older sibling, but also loving him at the same time, and having this sort of weird simulacra of him and appear in a dream world who seems designed to appease him in this really uncanny manner. Maybe that's kind of weird. I don't know. That might just be weird by itself.
Not Asriel, because Asriel is literally controlling them from inside their own soul. Oh my god. Think of the ramifications of this.
The laughing.
If this theory is true, then that means there are two versions of Asriel at
Oh hell yeah, we get twice the goat boy now. Was this was it like that in Dreamer Reborn? What was Flowey doing in Dreamer Reborn? I can't remember. That must have been a thing, right? Oh no, wait, Flowey turned into the Asriel creature. Right, yeah. Usually you achieve a Dreamer Reborn by oh no, I'm getting it mixed up. No, Dreamer Reborn was the other way around. It was Frisk's soul inside Asriel, but this is Asriel's soul inside not Frisk's. So I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Why am I ranting about a 6-year-old fan comic?
play in this story. There's the soul of Asriel, who is currently controlling the body of their sibling, and then there's the body of Asriel, which has been reanimated through the power of the Grand Fountain. Wait, oh my god.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
No.
Rousey is a nobody from Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my god, I was going to make the joke, but you got to it first. Damn. This is like very much what it feels like to I don't play Kingdom Hearts, but watching like all those like 3-hour long lore explainers, this is what it feels like by the end. Where it's like there's 20 different versions of each character. There's so many versions of each character that there's arguably only 2 characters in the whole game, and there's different versions of them fighting each other. It's great. It's fucking immaculate world building.
Rousey is literally a soulless body that has been
Can I say this? If you have achieved a theory through the miracles of science and your human intellect to do the impossible and to make Deltarune and Undertale ain't the Kingdom Hearts, you have successfully transmuted gold into lead. It is a monumental achievement. What have you gained by doing this? What was it worth it? What have you done?
Brought back to life. Oh my god. That's why Rousey has the black heart-shaped hole in the front of his chest.
That's clearly a spade. It's to demonstrate his kismissitude with the protagonist.
It's because he used to have a soul before he was killed by Chris.
That's literally in Kingdom Hearts, they have the insignia, the heartless insignia on them. Yeah. What a good linchpin of the theory. Toby is just literally ripping off Kingdom Hearts. Like, literally just ripping it off.
Oh my god, Rousey is literally a Kingdom Hearts character.
Yeah,
wait,
we did it.
Wait,
we
it
did
gets
it.
even
Yeah,
better.
Yeah, better.
Andrew Cunningham
more.
was wondering
me.
why Chris would create a dark fountain after experiencing the Snowgrave
Well, you already brought up my video to make your point. You already did that.
route. But this theory perfectly explains that.
So you said that already. This is just a duplicate.
From Chris's point of view, the
I mean, 2 shoutouts. I'll take it. It's, why not?
Snowgrave route is Asriel going off the deep end and
Oh, he doesn't sound like Matt Pett anymore. He sounds like Phil Swift. And then I saw this blown in half.
committing atrocities using Chris's body. That would terrify Chris and would make them scared not of Dark Worlds, but of their own brother. Snowgrave wouldn't have pushed Chris away from creating.
Wait. Wait.
To show you the power of flex tape, I sawed this boat in half.
Basically, where this theory is operating on flex tape at this point.
creating Dark Worlds, Snowgrave would have made Chris even more invested in creating Dark Worlds than in the normal route. Because now Chris's loved ones are in danger. After the Snowgrave route, Chris would know that Azrael is willing to use their body to commit atrocities.
Oh, wait, what the fuck? What the fuck? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. No. Hold up. What the fuck? Why is I didn't even think about this. This was the same argument I made in my own video, where basically Azrael has become the third entity. That's all that has happened here. Is we have gone on a mile-long loop-de-loop, an hour and 6 minutes, to conclude that Azrael is the third entity from my Chris's Soul video, which I discounted using the point, why would Azrael do that? Why would Azrael do atrocities? He's not going to address that. Oh, it makes perfect sense. Why would Chris make the Dark Fountain? Chris doesn't. It's Azrael, obviously. No, that's not even actually correct. No, Chris is making the Dark Fountain. It's not Azrael doing it. But we still have to have, like, it goes from, like, why would Chris do this morally objectionable action? Why would he create the Dark Fountain after the Snowgrave run? To, it's because Azrael did the Snowgrave run. How do we explain that? Why did Azrael do that? How does that make sense in universe? It almost as if it's designed to only make sense from an extra universe player doing it because they're playing a video game. It's almost like there is no in-universe logic that would lead you to committing mass murder unless you were a soulless flower for 1,000 years in a time loop. Why? How did we get here?
So Chris would insist on creating Dark Worlds in order to find a way.
This doesn't explain it even. It's the same logic as the player. It's like, oh, you could do the same thing if the player was controlling Chris instead. The player did the Snowgrave run, therefore my loved ones are in danger, something got to make a Dark Fountain. I'm not sure how that works, but we've just replaced the player with Azrael, and it's the same argument. This doesn't explain anything.
Way to get Azrael out of their soul before they
Oh no, they want to get Azrael out. It's because that's so why can't they do that already though? If there is a logic to which, like, somehow Chris could stick the shard of Azrael's soul from their soul into Ralsei and reconstitute a fully formed Azrael, why can't they just do that to Ralsei as it stands? What are they trying to accomplish here? By making this new Dark Fountain, they could have just done that, like at the end of the Snowgrave run, just like take it out of your chest, spike it into that goat's body, just take it back, boom, done. Why haven't they done that already? Why haven't they just given the soul back if that's possible at all?
Kill more people. Oh my god, this is literally Kingdom Hearts!
That's what I'm thinking, but it's not a good thing. It's really, really bad. It's extremely worrying. It's like, wow, we've literally diagnosed you with cancer, man! You did it! Woo! So, no offense to Kingdom Hearts fans, but the lore doesn't make a lot of sense. It really doesn't.
Okay, calm down, everyone. There's still an issue with this theory. I can hear you all saying now, but Jaru, if your theory is right, then that means Azrael would be responsible for the Snowgrave route.
Yes, he's getting to it. All right.
And that doesn't make sense.
That's an issue. That doesn't make sense.
Because Azrael is a good boy.
Yeah, Azrael's a good boy. Yeah.
Azrael would never commit a...
No, Azrael wouldn't do an atrocity. No. He's going to say Flowey did. Because within his own logic, his own twisted logic, Flowey didn't need to be soulless to do that. Flowey just had to be traumatized. Oh my god! No, in the nightmare logic, it makes sense. Fuck. Because Azrael endured trauma. That's what happens in the Jaruverse. If you endure trauma, you immediately become not only like you don't get PTSD, you don't get depression. You become a psychopath, a sadistic psychopath who wants to murder people. In this case, immediately. Flowey had the excuse of like a time loop. You got to get really bored. No, Azrael is immediately on the murder sauce. As soon as he gets that trauma hit, he just wants to kill. Nothing else can make him feel whole again. He just wants to kill.
Atrocities, right? Also, Noelle said that the person commanding her had a terrifying voice, and Azrael doesn't have a terrifying voice, right? Oh,
Cut to footage
wait.
of Flowey. Cut to footage. There it is. There it is. He's doing it. He's doing it. Oh my god. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. It's because trauma. Flowey is because trauma. Azrael commits. Is there an explanation? Does this also explain the genocide route from Undertale? Is not even that safe? There's still a little bit of like metatext and meaning left in Undertale? We could go back real quick with the new like God theory and just sweep that up. It can neatly take care of that. No need to ever have emotions or any kind of commentary in your game ever again.
Yeah, sorry, but we all know full well that Azrael is capable of things much worse than the Snowgrave route. With enough trauma, Azrael can commit genocide.
Trauma is my power. It's like every anime character who gets stronger when they get angry, but it's like trauma mode. It's like Omori, you know. It's basically what you're fighting at the end is like the trauma powers. No, I want to listen to that again. No, you just said that. It's the new determination and the new essence in one. It is in fact trauma.
Is capable of things much worse than the Snowgrave route. With enough trauma, Azrael can commit genocide. And
Is that why Hitler did it? I don't know. But do we have a theory to explain that?
I'd say being murdered.
Should I not have brought that up? I probably shouldn't have brought that up.
And absorbed by their own sibling is pretty traumatic. Now, to be fair, the trauma that Deltarune Azrael has gone through is much less than the amount of...
Trauma 2 is an acronym. Oh my god, I've lost my mind. Trauma 2 is an acronym. Oh my god. Even after not surviving. Fuck the trauma. The trauma. It's trauma within trauma awaits you, Riku, or something.
Of trauma that Flowey went through. However, you have to understand that this is on a sliding scale. On the one end of this scale...
Yeah, we got it. In the papyrus font. The signature red papyrus font. Like kind of weirdly anti-aliased papyrus font.
Uncorrupted Azrael. This version of the character has experienced no trauma and is thus pure and kind and would never hurt a fly.
This is like bad vibes, right? This is... You see where this is going. I'm getting flashbacks to like the extra credits, like orcs or black people kind of implication. Like, no, maybe that I shouldn't have gone there, but like I don't like that what this is implying. Okay, like
fly. On the opposite end of this spectrum is Flowey, who has experienced all of the trauma and is thus capable of a
+5 trauma. It's almost like Undertale's canonical leveling system was based on how desensitized you were to violence. Maybe it makes sense all along.
Atrocities on a global scale. The Deltarune Azrael exists somewhere but
you just get a taste of the trauma. He's not fully hooked yet. He only does a little bit of mass murder on a smaller scale. This is unbelievable. Like, this has gone from, like, okay, tenuous, and then it just off the rails, madness, like a travesty that is like an insult to the games we're working with. And now we're at the trauma spectrum, which is like an insult to the human race, potentially?
Between these two extremes, as he is traumatized, but not to the extent of Flowey, which means that his corruption is not guaranteed. That's why Snowgrave is...
This is like the... This is what love was already, basically. This is like in the Nera Kara kind of idea where you have Kara and Kara is soulless. Note how in general you start with the supposition that the character is soulless and therefore supernaturally cut off from empathy, so that you don't have to have this implication that trauma makes you evil. And then you crank it up. There's like a spectrum of desensitization to violence, but you do that by being violent, by enacting violence, by hurting people, not by being hurt yourself. This was already like a system that was so important to Undertale that they made it part of the game mechanics. And this is like just a different version of that, but much, much worse.
Is an optional route as opposed.
Impressive, but can your trauma beat this? I want like a Sonic, like the Sonic Adventure live action fan dub, but everything is trauma. Like all, instead of like the Chaos Emeralds, they're talking about trauma all the time. That would be really good.
To a guaranteed route. Asriel's humanity, so to speak, has not yet been lost. So there's still
Humanity. Actually, don't you mean monsterhood?
hope for him to recover from this trauma. Or maybe he'll be consumed by his trauma and go full sociopath.
Yeah.
Both options are still on the table.
Hit it with more trauma.
Now, I can hear some of you saying, but Jaru, even if getting murdered by Chris was traumatic, that's not enough to justify Asriel doing the Snowgrave
He's good at calling the counter arguments sometimes. I mean, that is what I was saying.
route. He's still too good of a boy to do.
So Chad is cracking me up every time. Inject them with the trauma. Alfie's entry number 14. I'm just going to keep injecting everyone with trauma. I really want this to work. She's got like the crate of trauma syringes, the sign in the labs, trauma extractor, status inactive. Damn, it's like the scream extractor from Monsters Inc. It's like you hook up Sunny into that thing and you can power a city for a year. Holy shit.
Something like that. And to be honest, you might be right.
That actually explains, this theory even explains Omori, because with the trauma extractor powering the city, that explains how Sunny's microwave can turn on even with the power out in his house, because it's actually powered by sadness.
However, there is one factor, my dear viewer, that you are not taking into consideration. The player. The player is not controlling Chris, but we are controlling Asriel, which means his fate is in our hands.
But what? You just went through all the trouble of, like, we need the trauma spectrum, we need to do all this weird shit so that Justify Asriel would in character do the Snowgrave run, and now you're saying, no, it doesn't need to be in character because the player was controlling him anyway. It's almost like it was the player the whole time. It's almost like all you ever needed was the player. It's almost like the game is making a commentary on you as the player. How on earth have we gone this far only to arrive back here at like the most default interpretation, where it's like, it's not actually the player controlling Friss, it's Asriel being controlled by the player, who effectively has to be the same as the player. None of his own characterization can actually make an impact, otherwise that wouldn't make sense. But as long as Asriel is completely subsumed by the player's will, and therefore has no agency, then that makes sense again, because now we've essentially just reconstructed a more complex model where the player controls Chris.
Frisk was, in all likelihood, a really good kid who didn't want to hurt anyone. But that didn't matter. Frisk was under our control, and thus was capable of committing horror.
Remove the trauma spectrum. You have incurred great personal cost to put the trauma spectrum in your video. God knows how that's going to go down in the future. Like, yikes, this was a really bad idea. And you didn't need it. It was completely useless. It was completely redundant, and now you're zooming in on 50 copies of it while explaining that it's redundant. Like, I cannot believe it.
Horrible evil. The same is true for Asriel. Whether he is aware of it or not, He is under our
I'm picturing this now as like a bullet pattern in Undertale, where you have all these the copies of the trauma spectrum scrolling across the screen. You got to jump between them. This is the visuals bringing that to mind.
control and is thus quite capable of falling to the dark side if we force that upon him.
So it's if we force Asriel to do the thing, then it would retroactively have been in character for him to do it because we forced him to do it. So that made him. What the fuck? It's like Asriel didn't do it, but because we made him do it, he would have done it because he's a psychopath, because he has trauma. What the fuck?
I really do have to apologize for making this video. I know that this theory and this idea will upset a lot of you because it's so horrible and tragic. But the reality is that Alphys's anime was a metaphor for Undertale and Deltarune. The first anime was cheerful and optimistic, just like Undertale, because that was the timeline where it was possible to give everyone a happy ending. But Deltarune is not that timeline.
Oh my
Deltarune
god.
is the darker sequel
Was that like a joke? Was the anime a joke? Hang on.
to give everyone a happy ending. But
Is the anime actually not a joke? I don't know why like that's... I'm hung up on that after everything. Despite all you've been through, despite everything, you're still upset by the anime being taken seriously. This is a joke. This is a joke. It's whatever series Alfie's watched first in universe, she thinks is good, and the other one is bad. That's the joke. It's anime fans have no objective standards. They just go off of nostalgia. That's the joke. That's the joke. Come on.
Deltarune is not that timeline. Deltarune is the darker sequel that isn't afraid to treat you like an adult.
Yeah, and for his neutral special, Chris wields a gun. And yeah, just to cap it all off, it's predict the ending of the game. Say, yeah, it's doing this. We can't have a happy ending because of this. Okay, the video's not quite over yet, but clearly all the points have been made. Let me say, like, when I heard this video described vaguely in a vacuum, I had a much more charitable picture of it than what I've been confronted with here. Like, Chris killing Asriel, in perfectly general, devoid of all the other implications and weird shit, like, that could be an interesting story, sure. I've played one other game that I could use an example. I won't say why, because that would be a spoiler. If you know, please don't put it in chat, because that would also be a spoiler. But, like, there's a way to do that story well, sure, that could be cool. But, like, this has systematically gone through and, like, knocked down all hope of, like, every possible way you could make it into, like, a sort of a good story has been destroyed by the specificity this has gone into since then. Where it's, like, only the worst possible version of Chris killing Asriel subplot. It's undermined all the themes, all the implications, even going back to Undertale, undermining its themes, its characters. It's like, it's just not. I'm looking at this now from, like, having watched having heard the whole theory unfold and looking at it from a bird's eye view, and just imagining what it would be like to play through this version of the game, and it would just suck. This would not be good. Where you're just like, it's all revealed to be a murder mystery, not even a murder mystery. Like, this feels so detached from the, like, tonally and thematically from everything else in the game. Like, I can't even picture, like, the interactions with, like, you know, Susie and shit, and why. How does this get into the your choices don't matter big theme that everyone seems to be into, like how Susie says that? How does this get into the prophecy of light and dark? What is this? What are the dark worlds even for in this case? Like, if you had a plot twist this big, it would be annihilating. Like, I feel like there wouldn't be enough room to hold it in the plot and have all these other threads actually pay off too. Like, if you revealed this, it's going to sideswipe and derail the entire rest of the game. And it's just going to be about, holy shit, Chris killed Ralze and is now Chris killed Asriel, sorry, and is covering it up. Like, what the fuck? Why do we care about the night? Why do we care about the prophecy of light and dark? It's all gone to shit because of this one plot twist, and how it Jaru has proposed it would be handled. It's leaves me feeling like really just hollowed out and sad inside. It's like I watched an alternate timeline where Deltarune was terrible and I had to live through that, and then I'm waking up from a nightmare now. Like, holy, I know I'm describing this in really hyperbolic language, but watching this has been like an emotional experience that I legitimately was not expecting to be taken on this much of an absolute roller coaster by this video. It stirred feelings in me that I had no idea would be relevant to just a lore video. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, yes, Gaster in this, says chat. Where's Gaster? This is how Kingdom Hearts gets too, right? Where you're like balls deep into like Xehanort Saga, and you go, oh look, where's Mickey Mouse? What's Mickey Mouse doing right now? The answer is that it doesn't matter. Mickey Mouse doesn't matter. Okay, it's all about Xehanort and Kingdom Hearts and Riku Replica, and that's what it feels like. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts is such a good analogy, actually. I'm glad the video brought it up. Mel says this video seems like a troll. Honestly, I was getting that vibe during the end with the sustained like manic energy, like the cackling, the oh my god, it makes too much sense. It felt like a parody, really, which maybe it is. Maybe this is actually a joke, but I don't know. Like, I don't know why you'd make this if it was a joke. I don't know why you'd make an hour-long theory, an hour and 20 minutes, mixed in with like legitimately, decent points at the start, and then derail it into madness for the sake of a joke, because the people in the comments I've heard, they're not taking this as a joke. Like, they're just like, yeah, cool. Great theory, Jaru. Yeah. The ratio is immaculate on the likes to dislikes. Like, people, this is not meant to be a joke, and if it is meant to be, it has failed. Chat says, I get the vibe from Toriel is homophobic, but not this. Yeah, so the Toriel is homophobic video apparently comes off as less serious than this. Excellent. Excellent. Do I want to listen to the outro? I mean, I listened to the theory. I guess I'll listen to the outro.
I hate to break it to you folks, but this is Toby Fox we're talking about.
What was the context? I need the context.
Darker sequel that isn't afraid to treat you like an adult.
Oh, God.
I hate to break it to you folks, but this is Toby Fox we're talking about.
Wait a minute. One more gag. Undertale 2. More mature than ever. Shadow's gonna treat you like an adult. Now featuring 300 endings, I guess. Oh god, I've gone insane.
Did you really think he was going to let Asriel have a happy ending?
Why not? Why the fuck not? I'm not even torn up about it anymore. I used to really be like an emotional mess because of the way Undertale ended, but I'm over that. I don't even care anymore. But even then, it's like, why make it tragic again for no reason?
Really think he'd let you have a happy, magical Undertale AU where everybody's safe and secure? Of course not.
This is like legitimately edgy. I don't know. what this argument is. It's like, no, you thought you'd have a happy ending. Toby Fox doesn't believe in happy endings. It's not like he made an entire game. His debut game was about how you could overcome all adversity through the power of resolute pacifism and friendship, and only once stopped to consider that this might not be realistic in one line of dialogue at the very epilogue of the game. It's not the same guy at all. Jesus.
This is the timeline where Metaton's dreams never became a reality. This is the timeline where Gerson never got to be a legendary hero. This is the timeline where Noelle's dad is dying. And
She died in Undertale, too. In the alarm clock dialogue, he literally died.
there's nothing she can do. This is the timeline where Asgore is a disgraced former
You think you're seriously going to fucking argue with me right now that Asgore has it worse in Deltarune than in Undertale? Holy shit. Like, okay, in Deltarune, Asgore is like divorced and he lost his job, and he's sad about that. In Undertale, he was in like a supernaturally like terrible situation. It was like the stuff of legends. It was like the punishment of like a Greek god that Asgore had worked himself into. It was fucked up, man. It was fucked up. He was killing kids. He was killing kids all the time. It was like hundreds of years potentially. Jesus.
police chief struggling to pay rent. This is the timeline where Undyne and Alphys don't even know each other. This is the timeline where the Amalgamates never got closure with their families. This is
I don't want to comment on whether or not that's an improvement.
the timeline where Grillby's went out of business.
Oh my god, fucking tragedy. But also Sans is now a small business owner. Explain that. Sans is having a great time. Are you going to take this away from Sans just because Asgore is divorced? What do you think happened? We all know Grillby was killed when Asgore crashed his car while shipping some water back to water his flowers, and it spilled all the water onto to Grillby, and that's how he lost his job, right? So that's kind of sad, but at least Sans got to, take over his property.
This is the timeline where you don't get to see Papyrus.
In 2 chapters. Really in 2 chapters. There's so much of this video that could just be explained, or like so much of the urgency behind this is we need this crazy web of lies and conjecture to make everything make sense now, when we're not supposed to. Chapter 2, like so many, there could just be straight up lore drops. Just, I'm not even talking about implication. I'm talking about like True Labs level. This is why Ralsei can teleport. This is the truth. This is the reveal. These could be dropped on us at any point. They're sure as fuck not being dropped on us in chapter 2. All right? If you seeing Papyrus is going to have to wait. Maybe we'll see Papyrus. Maybe Papyrus is going to have a plot relevance at some point.
Because Papyrus would give you too much hope.
What the fuck is he? He's legitimately making this case that it's supposed to be this depressing nihilist hellscape. Deltarune's like a cheerful game, mostly. Like, I'd argue that like Undertale was darker half the time. Everyone is like trapped underground and actively trying to kill you. In Deltarune, the stakes are so fucking low. Like, all you're doing is like being sad and making friends. It's basically a Persona game, but without like an actual murderer to worry about. I mean, like, theoretically the world could be destroyed. Sure, why not? That's just a plot point, though. There's no like oomph behind that yet. We haven't actually been meant to feel the gravitas of like, oh shit, I hope the world doesn't end because of the roaring. It's Deltarune. The tone has been like resolutely chipper so far, basically, except for like the hometown segments. People tend to be a bit melancholy, but this isn't like nihilistic. It's still very much like an emotional story, and Chris is like making friends and doing all this stuff. It's like it's character driven.
There's a reason Sans says that we'd get to see Papyrus when we get to see our brother.
Oh my god.
We aren't ever
I see it.
Our brother.
I see it.
We aren't
Oh
ever
yeah.
seeing Papyrus.
Yeah,
This
the
is the
Sans
timeline.
line turned in. He even made Sans' dialogue into a massive downer. Oh,
Where
man.
your choices don't matter. This is the timeline where things are darker yet darker.
Oh yeah.
This is the-
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, use the entry 17. We haven't quoted entry 17 yet. Get that in there. Just smash it all down. It'll fit. I promise it'll fit.
A timeline where Asriel is secretly dead. I don't know the specifics.
I'm just reminded of the fact Undertale is the version of reality where Asriel is openly dead and secretly alive. Maybe that's the point. I don't know.
How this story is going to play out, but I can tell you one thing. Toby Fox will be breaking your heart into 1,000 tiny pieces before this story is over.
Toby Fox has no problem doing that. He has in fact done that on previous occasions more effectively than any other human being in the world, speaking personally, but he doesn't need any of this to do that. Toby Fox is better. He's better than this.
And he'll do it using a remixed version of his same...
Why did he have to continue? It's he's arguing against himself. It's like Toby Fox he's gonna break your heart. He's the best. And then he's gonna do it in the shitty way that doesn't make sense. It wouldn't have like. I don't get it, man.
Same old tricks.
The same old tricks. He's gonna do the same thing twice.
Of course, that's just my
theory. Oh my god, really? Sorry, I'm getting more and more agitated here. I should just let the video finish.
And for everyone's sake, including Asriel's, I sincerely hope that I'm wrong. This is a truly horrific story.
Yeah,
if my theory turns
it would be
out
bad.
To be true.
Like not like thematically, just like bad. It wouldn't be a good story. This is not good.
My theory about the angel is also true, then that would make Deltarune far too dark for a lot of people.
What the fuck is the angel theory? What was the angel theory? Holy shit. This is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
No matter how dark it gets, but I can understand why some of you will find my theory displeasing, to put it lightly.
It's not because it's too dark that it's displeasing. It's because it throws out all the other emotions in the story. It like invalidates them, and it takes away all the metatext that made like Undertale so interesting. Deltarune's also seems to have metatext. You're throwing that out. It's not a case of being too dark. Undertale was, I think a lot of the reason behind Undertale's popularity was because it had so many dark elements. It's really appealing, like, to, I don't want to just say kids. I mean, like, I count myself among that. When you have, like, these really dramatic moments of tragedy mixed into a story that's otherwise very upbeat, or conversely, that you use a comedic kind of tone to tell a story with very dark elements. I think that's a big part of why Undertale it works so well as a story, right? But this is pushing it too far into the actual tone and message are both like nihilistic on top of each other. Where like in the one other game I'm thinking of with a similar plot to this, the way it's meaningful in the story is because the entire game is built around dealing with the internal feelings of the person who killed the other person, and like this sort of the feelings, the trauma on their part and stuff like that. It's all internal. It's all a study of how that that past experience has affected them. And that hasn't really been, Deltarune hasn't been preoccupied with that at all so far. It's been keeping it completely under the table, which is insane to think about. Like if the story is going to turn into this, and so far it's tricked a whole bunch of other people, including myself, into thinking it's some sort of deconstruction of the player and the protagonist, and it's talking about, it's a metaphor for creating fictions when you make the Dark Fountains, and all those are irrelevant, invalid, going to be thrown out, just not that important compared to the Asriel's corpse is Ralze plot. It's nutty.
Again, I hope I'm wrong, but this is how the puzzle pieces lined up in my head, and I just had to get my thoughts out there. I could be wrong, of course.
I was afraid of that. I'm doing the narrator video right now, right? I've almost finished the script actually. But that's a big part of, maybe that's a spoiler for the video, but it's a big part of the conclusion is just because you can get the puzzle pieces to align in your head doesn't mean it's remotely close to being true. It's close to being true once you've put the puzzle together in your head and you've considered all the other puzzles and whether or not they make more sense and whether they're, I don't know how to extend this puzzle metaphor any further, but basically, like, if you're ignoring all the counter evidence, all the cons to your interpretation in order to justify it, then it's not worth making. it's pointless. You can convince yourself of anything.
I can always be wrong, but I do sincerely believe this is the truth behind Asriel and Ralsei. In my last video, I said the truth of Ralsei was at the heart of this story. I bet you never thought that I meant that so literally. Oh man. Toby Fox. What a mad lad.
He's a mad lad if he did all this shit that you just made up. I don't think Toby Fox would do that. It's what do you mean? Just like, oh yeah, I just conjecture that Toby Fox will do all this stuff. Chuckle, Toby Fox, you sly dog, you silly, you card. I can't believe you would write a conclusion this terrible to your story. I've almost exclusively shifted into attacking like the thematic implications of this now. Like before it was all about the evidence, but now it's just gotten to the point where like the devastation this would wreak on what has been built by not even Deltarune but like Undertale before it is incalculable, and I cannot accept it.
I hope you guys enjoyed this terribly dark theory video. And if you disagree with it, feel free to share your own theories in the comments below. I'm certain there's details that I missed, and I'm certain you can come up with theories that aren't nearly as distressing as this video's theory.
It's not distressing, it's all over the place. It's convoluted, it's massive, it ignores contradictions, it gets its fingers into every crevice of the plot that didn't have to be involved with this. Those are the complaints. It's not just that it's dark.
Although, since I can already tell this video will upset people, please allow me to request that you keep things civilized in the comments.
Have I even achieved
You guys have been wonderfully polite thus far, so I'd appreciate it if we could keep that up. And with
I feel like I have failed in that regard. Like I have become completely unprofessional here over the course of watching this, but I don't know. I don't feel like there was any other outcome knowing what this was.
With that, I think I'm just about out of things to say. I'm not sure what my next video is going to be about, which is a first. I've almost run out of topics to discuss regarding Deltarune. But I still want to make more videos, so maybe you guys can help me out with that. What would you like my next video to be about?
Why Ralsei is a darkener. It would be a cool video.
There's certainly a lot of options. I could discuss who the Roaring Knight is and what role he plays in this story.
Oh, I bet there's going to be so much good and conclusive evidence for that, and it's not at all going to go off the rails into conjecture. I'm afraid to do a video on the Knight personally, just because I don't think there's enough evidence to make like a meaningful conclusion. Your options are either to go into like crazy speculation or just to say, I don't know, like waffle around for as long as possible and conclude that you don't know. So I'm not brave enough to make that video.
I could discuss what I think is going on with Sans and how I think he fits into this. And of course...
Oh god, Sans doesn't have any, like, dialogue. He doesn't do anything. Sans doesn't do shit. What are you gonna say?
I could always do a video on Gaster. I've actually already written a script for my Gaster theory, although I'll need to drastically rewrite it to account for all these new revelations.
Oh my god, so this is like... This isn't The Simpsons. This is cumulative lore. So like every Jaru video is canon to the previous Jaru videos. So by making this, he has to keep this theory like active, like in like volatile memory for every future theory and keep everything straight. This is going to be like a titanic feat of world building by the time he's finished, with all of this conjecture being like suspended and having to make sense with each other. This is like how you catch a criminal in like a false alibi, is when the story gets too complex and it starts contradicting itself. What a fascinating... Yeah, it's an AU. Chat says this is just an AU. This is a brilliant
crazy experimental crack AU being presented as theory videos. It's like an avant-garde medium. Fascinating and weird. What the fuck?
But still, if y'all wanted to see that, I could definitely throw something together. Or maybe y'all want to see something completely different. Whatever the case, please let me know.
Like, it's gotten to the point where if you haven't watched all the videos, then certain points that are brought up just don't make sense, that or don't have an argument behind them, because that was me previously. It's really weird. Like, that's always something that I've been, or I mean, I don't want to make it sound like there's more than 2 examples, but like in the second video I made, I was pretty careful not to just rely exclusively on points that I raised in the first one, because then like I can't assume people have already watched that. It's a pretty big ask.
In the comments down below. And with that, I think we're done for today. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you've got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.
15 seconds left. What's gonna happen? Oh, the song's gonna end, I see. It was 1 note short. What the fuck? The song... No, there's 1 more note to the song. God damn it. Okay. Wow. Holy shit. I am exhausted after that. Like, I was tired before. I just come home from work, but I feel like I just like ran a marathon or something. That was like a mentally exhausting task. What do I say in conclusion here? I don't know. I've said it many times that got way messier than I thought. Like on my part specifically, in terms of how I was responding to that. I couldn't really just contain myself to sort of dry commentary. I ended up ranting like a lunatic. Oh well. Which, I don't know. Makes me kind of glad I have this unlisted currently. I'm not sure if I'll end up publishing this. I don't know if I want to risk like having my off-the-cuff ranting like starting drama or something. But maybe I should. Like, after watching that, I feel the sort of like inbuilt primal urge to refute it. Like the temptation is strong. Yeah, like at the end, I think I just got into like auto refute mode where I was like going after things that I didn't even need to be just because I was in that headspace. I think a lot of streamers fall into that when they're like reacting to stuff. But so that's unfortunate, but it was just the headspace, you know? Yeah, I'm surprised that my video got brought up in this, of all things. I guess maybe it's not that surprising. It did get a lot of views and attention, but I always assume there's going to be like, there's so many other people doing this pump who have a lot more videos than I do that they're going to be referenced before. But no, kind of interesting. Holy shit. Oh, well, yeah, that was an idea. I'm not sure if I'll do this again. Only time will tell whether this was a mistake or not, having this out there. I'd prefer to see your next video instead of a refutation of this... I'd prefer to see your next video instead of a refutation of this troll theory. Oh yeah, I'm not going to make a video like refuting this. That's not going to happen. I would not have the mental energy to sustain that. It wouldn't be an enjoyable process. I really, fundamentally, I don't enjoy like arguments and conflict. It really drains me, even if it's like in an abstract form, like trying to debunk someone else's theory. Yeah, I'm just gonna, for like actual edited videos, I'm 100% just gonna focus on my own stuff, my own takes. Chat says, I think I'll go do a genocide run after the amount of trauma this gave me. Oh boy, yeah, that, of all the things in the video, like, trauma diagram, absolutely a mistake. Like, holy shit.
Why did no one stop him from doing that? That is, God. Yeah, and trying to edit like a debunk video on this, it's like it's an hour and 20 minutes long. Okay, well, if you wanted to debunk it, you would have to contend with its full girth. You would have to rise to its like sheer magnitude and complexity in order to even try to discredit it, which is like, I feel so mentally drained just from having gone through it and given live commentary. I can't imagine trying to write a script that like took this down systematically. It would be terrifying. Oh God. So yeah, hopefully this won't become a recurring thing. This maybe is best just as a one-off because the Discord server was really excited. I don't want to make a habit of like reacting to people's stuff and like shitting on it. I think that's kind of a negative precedent to set. I certainly wouldn't want to do like monetized content on this, but just this once, maybe it was warranted because that was just a fucking. It was beyond anything I could have imagined, actually. Oof. Okay, maybe I'll end the stream now. I don't want to go for 8 hours again like the other ones, unless anyone in chat has some quick questions. Oh, actually, no. I have one thing to say. I was considering doing like an actual stream at some point, like a proper one that isn't just me ranting about some YouTube video. I was going to play off, actually, by the recommendation of several people. Well, honestly, many people going back to like 2015 have been telling me to play off, but I think maybe on Sunday at around 2 o'clock, I could stream that. 2 o'clock PST, the same as the last stream, actually, so I'll post about it in the Discord server too, but I figured I'd announce that if anyone's interested in some 2022 off gameplay. I've never played it before. I have had maybe like the big twist spoiled. I'm not sure. It's been a long time, but I don't really know anything about it. I've never seen it. I've never played it. Yeah. And as far as announcements, that's about it. Maybe I'll just see you all later. Gastrogif. Where's my gastrogif? There we go. Now I can end the stream as soon as I find the button on OBS. All right. Bye, everyone.